has been provided for this meeting. Ms. Coleman, roll call, please.
Mrs. Brown?
Here.
Mr. Chu?
Here.
Mrs. DeMarco?
Here.
Mrs. Devine?
Here.
Mrs. Mikulski?
Here.
Mrs. Sherman?
Here.
Mrs. Z?
Here.
Mr. Dilkus?
Here.
Mrs. Maya?
Here. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. All right, we're going to move on to section 2. There was no executive session at this time, so we're going to move past that and enter into committee of the whole. So can I get a motion to enter committee of the whole, please?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
At this time, we're going to have our presentation for the budget highlights, and then we're going to move our seats, I think. We have the PowerPoint, and then we'll come back and we'll talk, okay?
Okay, so good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. We are here to present the budget submission for the 2026-27 school year and provide just some updates into the budget that is being submitted to the state for review. So as with all budgets, our budgets are aligned with our mission and vision. And so building on the strengths of our community in order to make sure that we have an inclusive and supportive environment that inspires and empowers every student. Ultimately, to focus on the foster to qualities necessary in order to make sure that students can contribute to their local communities. We are also a school district that is driven by our core values, student success, equity and inclusion, and in team and family. We use this to drive policy, practices, and inform overall culture. The district leadership is responsible for ensuring a few items. First, analyzing systems and removing barriers. Moving from compliance to making sure that our actions are directly aligned with instructional improvement. Reframing mandates and translating them into what does it mean to be effective at teaching and learning. Commitment to supporting our leaders, and also commitment to supporting and retaining dedicated faculty and staff. These are our school district priorities for the 26-27 school year. From an administrative perspective, improve the alignment of administration to better support our strategic goals and objectives. Actively engage the community to address our infrastructure challenges, which are well documented. Continue to identify strategies to secure adequate school funding. Actively pursue additional revenue to support student learning initiatives, and ultimately commit to supporting and retaining as many of our dedicated faculty and staff as possible. In curriculum, implement our ELA pilots with their alignment to the science of reading, as well as we transition out of Readers Writers Workshop. Expand our universal screeners to include math and English language arts, and then a continued focus on data-driven instruction aligned with school-wide goals, and then implemented at the grade and at the student level. pre-K through 5, maintain universal access to high-quality preschool for Collingswood families, and then ultimately update our infrastructure to support and sustain our MTSS model. Grades 6 through 12, support the transition to a 6 through 12 unified campus, also update the infrastructure to support MTSS, or a multi-tiered system of support, and continue to implement our math curriculum with fidelity. In terms of our operations, establish school-based technology lead program in order to support instruction, establish consistent cycles of technology replenishment to support instruction, and actively seek operational efficiencies and additional shared service opportunities. So the big question is, what is our budget challenge? In order to answer this question, we have to understand the fiscal environment in which not just Collingswood, but all school districts are currently operating under. We live in a time of challenge and uncertainty as it relates with public dollars, as it relates with rising inflationary costs, as it relates to the growing needs of students. So persistent inflation and rising operational costs continue to be a challenge. Fluctuating student enrollment patterns, local budget gaps, continuing mental health challenges, supports, needs that evolve on a regular basis, unfunded state mandates, federal grant cancellations and expirations, elimination of other federal programs and services, reductions to overall K-12 funding, and growing teacher shortages in specialized areas. What is our long-term funding concern? The Collingswood School District has been what the state considers below adequacy since 2009. We have operated with a structural budget deficit since 2013. What does that mean? In 2009, a 2% tax cap was put in place, which limits how much funding schools can collect from local property taxes. The tax cap only allows districts to increase the local tax levy by 2% each year, despite operational costs significantly exceeding 2%. Over time, the gap of what we need and what we can collect continues to grow, and the longer this trend continues, the harder it is for our schools to be able to meet the growing demands for our students, and ultimately, significant cuts and reductions have become necessary in order to balance the budget. What are some of those costs that are increasing? Our personnel costs for the 26-27 school year was 6.5%. That is not adding additional staff, that is maintaining the existing staff. It has increased over the last 5 years a net 1% despite previous staffing reductions. Health benefits, 22% increase from this year to last year. In the last 5 years, healthcare costs have increased by 53%. This is despite staffing reductions, and the healthcare costs have increased by 53%. Out-of-district tuition rates, those are trending at flat for this upcoming school year. However, over the last 5 years, they have increased by 18%. Required maintenance, the average annual increase to maintain our facilities, and our facilities have an average age of about 90 years, is 6.5%. Utilities over the same period of time have increased almost 80%. And so the bottom line is that the cost to operate or the cost to maintain significantly exceeds the revenues that are available. And so if we look at 24-25, 25-26, and 26-27, you notice a trend. In the areas in blue shows the cost of operations. In yellow are the revenues that are available through state, local taxes. For the 26-27 school year, to maintain what we currently have, there was a $4.8 million increase in operational costs with no new additions. We received a decrease of $305,000 in state aid, but we were only able to increase revenues of $1.5 million, which includes a 2% cap and the healthcare adjustment. School districts are permitted to increase a healthcare adjustment when the state employee's health plan exceeds a certain level. The state employee's health plan is 33% this year. That translates into us being $3.3 million in the negative in order to maintain current staffing levels and programming. What is the impact to our schools? There are only two options: increase revenue, decrease expenses. We are legally not in a position to increase revenues at this particular juncture, and so the only option afforded to the school district was to decrease overall operational expenses by $3.3 million. So what has been done to address these challenges? We continue to advocate for the last 4 years fair and equitable funding. School districts like Collingswood are disproportionately affected with the current state funding formula. Different districts around the state are also negatively affected. With last school year, 50% of all school districts were in the negative based on the way that the formula is currently configured. 125 of those school districts were so much in the deficit that it forced the state to allow the school districts to go beyond the 2% cap with a one-time program. That program has not been offered this year. And so, thankful to community members, to staff members, to board members, letter campaigns have been helping us to open doors that were previously closed in terms of advocacy. Technical reports and white papers have been written by various legislative groups pushing and advocating for change. In Camden County, there is a New Jersey Fair Funding Collective that we are a part of, that we are an active participant in pooling resources within our area to advocate for the necessary change, because many of the districts in Camden County are also negatively affected. Public hearings. We've had board members participate in state hearings advocating for change and advocating on behalf of our local community. We've also had Collingswood residents that have developed information websites to help us better understand and garner additional support around this important topic. And then, as I shared previously, we took full advantage of last year's tax levy incentive aid program. We requested the maximum amount that was allowable per state law, and we were approved $2 million short of what was requested. What are some additional cost-saving measures that we have been implementing over many, many years? External relationship management, actively seeking grants, philanthropic support, additional resources and revenue in order to offset some of these financial challenges. We are in insurance joint ventures in order to make sure that we are getting our insurance at the lowest possible rate. We are in a utilities consortium to make sure that our energy costs are as low as possible. We participate in cooperative purchasing in order to make sure that we are not overspending in the acquisition of supplies. One of the things that we are extremely proud of is our continued growth in the area of shared services. Between Collingswood, Oakland, the borough, and 7 other school districts, this helps to generate income and to offset some of the fiscal challenges. In terms of transportation, we operate for our vocational technical program, we operate one special education bus to lower our transportation costs. We participate through Oakland Public Works for trash removal. And then we also believe that by offering robust programming, that helps us to stabilize enrollment and increase the likelihood of increasing enrollment over the long term. What is the current status of our funding sources? And so to lead us in this next section, I'm going to have our Chief Financial Officer and our Assistant Superintendent of Business and Finance, Ms. Beth Ann Coleman.
Good evening. So this slide, you can just see our enrollment. We're on a downward trend. Typically, if you do see a spike in enrollment, Trenton will let you increase your taxes. They'll give you a enrollment adjustment so you can increase your taxes for the additional children that have been enrolled in your district. Unfortunately for us, we got a double whammy this year. Not only were we decreased in state aid because they consider us overfunded, but we're also seeing a downward slide of enrollment, particularly at the high school. So this slide just represents what's currently in the school district budget, and I did post the budget to the website as far as what I have put in the budget and have available for revenue to support our expenditures going into next school year. Fund balance, which is basically a savings, money I did not spend last year, basically a savings account that I roll into the new year. I typically like to see that in years past. I've had that closer to $800 to $1 million. So you can see how close we came to spending our budget completely last year. $156,000. Local tax levy, $25,309,859. Just so you can see, the state aid is about just shy of 25%, and they consider us overfunded at that rate. The rest we have to generate locally. Tuition is $6.3 million, or 14% of our budget. What we're having the issue with tuition, and last year I spoke about it also, is obviously we have Oakland and Woodland that send to us, and now we're in this spiral where we're cutting our budgets. So we set our tuition rate, and we agree on a number of pupils 15, 16 months in advance, right? And then come to find out that the children that we thought were coming, maybe they decided to go somewhere else, and then I'm also cutting district budgets, so the cost per pupil that we estimated winds up being different. So we're always in a tuition adjustment cycle. That's what's going on here. Our tuition is relatively flat from last year. So, you know, there's a limit to what I can charge our sending districts for tuition. So I try not to max them out because they're obviously in the same situation we are. So there's a sweet spot in tuition, but the last few years, the number of kids that I was told were going to come, there's usually 10 or 20 off from what I was told, and it automatically generates an adjustment where we have to pay the money back. So at the end of each year, we have to square it up, basically. I'm withdrawing $52,807 out of maintenance reserve. I will say to the board and to the community, that is depleting our maintenance reserve. That's all I have left. State law says we can have a maintenance reserve, and I can withdraw from that to help pay for some of our maintenance projects. So any surplus I generate in this year, I'm going to be looking to replenish some of our maintenance reserves, but that is depleting it at this point in time. Capital reserve, $136,000. The law also says if I have capital reserve, I can withdraw it for certain capital projects. I can't just use it to balance my budget, so we're going to be doing some work around the district, and that $136,000 is going to support that. Student activities, admissions, facility fees, so when people want to rent our building or the like, we generate about $37,000. Not a lot of money, but I just wanted to give you a full picture of all the areas that we're generating income. State aid, $10.7 million. We were about a little over $11 million last year. Semi-Medicaid, this is an area, basically it's a flow through for the state of New Jersey from the federal government. That number has been dwindling, but again, I noted here. And then miscellaneous, that $479,000, that's basically the income we generate from all of our shared services in the area, our interest income, any refunds, basically anything that doesn't fit in any other category. If you're a picture learner, just gives you a representation. And here's our expenditures. So 66% of our budget is direct in the classroom instructional costs, $28.6 million. Another 16% is $6.9 million is student services, so that would be your child study team, your counselors, your school nurses. Facilities, 11%, and then administrative is 7%, or $3,042,000. And then again, and the year-over-year comparison, what everybody wants to know, the increase in taxes. So we went from 24-25, $18.7 million. Again, we got the tax levy incentive aid last year, so the current school year we're in 25-26, we're at $23.7 million. 26-27, we're looking at $25,309,859. A little over $1 million of that is the healthcare adjustment. And it comes to $332 a year to the average house. Average house assessment's $448,100, about $28 a month for the average home. Did you want this?
Earlier in the presentation, you heard me reference local funding, also referred to as local fair share. And so this is generated through local property taxes and goes towards schools in each of the communities. And so this chart that you're seeing, there's two areas I'd like for you to look at, with the red dashed line being 100% funded in terms of locally. The green is state funding received, and the blue is actual percentage of local fair share. And so noted in red, so these are all of the school districts in Camden County. And you will see where Collingswood falls as it relates with local fair share. We are the 10th lowest in local funding in Camden County of what we actually receive. The green shows where Collingswood receives 138% of what the state says we should be receiving in state aid. So what is the local funding gap? According to the state funding formula, the Collingswood schools should be receiving $28,884,796 for the 26-27 school year. The local tax levy, what the borough is scheduled to provide and what they are required to provide by the current funding formula, is $24,255,608. That translates to roughly a $4.6 million gap in what the state says we should be receiving versus what we're actually receiving. This is another way to look at it, and so there are 4 categories. Starting at the top, there is local funding. Next is actual taxes collected. The green in the middle is K-12 state funding. And then the bottom is excess surplus. And so that is cost savings that schools are able to generate over time. And so what you see is that going back to 2013, we have seen a continued either leveling out or steady decrease in our ability to create surplus to help offset local contribution. State aid has been flat. The local tax levy has increased, but it is not increased consistent with the rate of what the state is expecting the local contribution to be. In terms of taxes, we live in a state where taxes are high. Anyone who owns a home, myself included, the taxes are incredibly high. However, Collingswood has the 3rd lowest tax rate in all of Camden County. Third only to the city of Camden and Haddon Township, which has significantly more commercial property. And so in the long term, we cannot cut our way to a better future, and we can't tax our way to a better future. But it is important for us to look at the myriad of options that we need to come together as a community in order to address this financial challenge. So what is the status of state aid? So at the top, you will see what the state calculates the district should be receiving in state aid, which is roughly $5.3 million. The state adjusted our state aid funding based on the significant gap in local funding, and we're actually receiving $6.7 million in state aid, which means that we are being overfunded by the state of New Jersey by $1.4 million. So what does this mean? This means that probably for the next 5+ years, we will continually see decreases in state level funding until we get to where the state believes that we should be, which would be 100%. What about grants? As a district, back in 21-22, we aggressively pursued philanthropic dollars, federal dollars, and local state dollars in order to offset some of these structural deficits. And we were able to generate roughly $7.1 million in total grant funding. During the last election cycle, when the government changed over, we received notice that our federal grants would be canceled because they no longer were aligned with the new administration's goals and priorities. And so, as you can see, 2 pretty substantial grants were canceled by the federal government back in January, We've also had smaller grants in order to bring in new programs and provide additional services that have expired. So what does this all mean for the 26-27 school year? Our anticipated reductions: considerable reductions of full-time and part-time positions, administrative, teaching, secretarial, support, and facilities. The closure of Garfield Elementary School, the consolidation of the middle and the high school campus, the closure of the middle and the high school wellness center. Select athletics and co-curriculars will convert to pay-to-play, and reductions to other operational line items. And so what is the budget timeline? Tonight, the board will participate in deliberative conversation in their committee of the whole to talk about the impact, the implications of what the numbers are telling us. We will not be going into specificity in terms of details because that is not fully known yet until we receive state approval based on the numbers. And so what's being submitted tonight is a spreadsheet with line items, making sure that the dollars that are in each line item present a balanced budget and that the funds are in the appropriate line item based on their intended purpose aligned with state and federal guidelines. The goal will be to submit the budget to the Department of Education by March 27th. While we wait for state feedback and approval, we will be meeting with building administrators to discuss the impact of the budget while we plan for April. We'll continue to plan for new and existing programs, staffing changes, and ultimately facilities projects. In April, it will be our focus to go out to bid for summer facilities and capital projects, and the public budget hearing, which will have details of the budget and its impact on April 27th. In May, we will open the 26-27 budget, and this will allow schools to begin the ordering process in order to prepare for the 26-27 school year. And we will be working with our contractual obligation to issue employee contracts by May 15th. That concludes our presentation. Questions from the board?
Okay, so at this time, this is our committee of the whole section, and we're going to allow board members to have a conversation and ask questions, and do our best to try to ask questions that are relevant and hopefully generate some good discussion.
I know we talked about this in our committee of the whole, but I just thought it would be worth asking. There's still no notice about potential tax levy program through Governor Sherrill. There's no option at all.
I have several questions, so I'm going to get my thoughts in order, but I want to first make sure that we're thinking about the revenue accurately. The state aid in the summary is 10 million, but our more detailed slide suggests 6.7, so I just want to make sure I'm framing this data correctly. Can you just help me with that? I printed it out, I don't know. Your more detailed state aid were...
Oh, I believe, so the slide you're referring to?
The summary slide, lovely.
Well,
very
it's a
helpful.
summary slide of just one type of state aid. That's equalization aid. So let me explain what that is. That's only part of your state aid. So usually if there's a gap between local fair share, it's going to sound funny because it's going the other way, but Trenton determines if there's a gap in local fair share and state funding, technically Trenton's supposed to make it up, and they call it equalization aid. but they consider us overfunded in that area. So we get state aid in about 5 or 6 categories. We get special ed aid, we get transportation aid, we get security aid, special ed aid, equalization aid, preschool aid. So that's just one category.
So
It's not the entire pot.
total aids are
Yes.
10,700,000.
Correct.
And the one that is more articulated in terms of the over funding is the equalization aid, which is to compensate for your local portion.
Correct. That's
The one
where,
we're highlighting,
that's the
okay.
one that was cut this year by 305,000.
Oh,
Which, and that's the one that I would anticipate would continue to be cut
All
in
right,
the
so
next
that is us
several years.
projecting the potential rebalancing over time.
Yes.
Okay. And then can you help me just thread the needle on our enrollment projections? High school, we all know I'm on campaign, get students here from all districts, but want to better understand preschool, and particularly our focus has been on kind of that elementary, secondary. So how are we going to keep the pathway going if pre-K seems to be smaller, yet we've created more locations for preschool? So can you just help me with the preschool projections?
That was a quandary to me as well. We actually applied for 225 seats for preschool. So when in years past, we find out from preschool about a week before state budget's due. We found out about our preschool revenue and our preschool enrollments at the same time as state aid was getting released. But we applied for 225 seats. The state only awarded and are funding 217. So my guess is that the Sherrill administration didn't have enough money in the budget for all of the projected preschools, because I think some schools are opening brand new preschools. So we weren't awarded all of the seats that we have available. So we're only being funded for 217.
So we should understand going into the next school year, we will have fewer pre-K seats than we do at present.
Correct. Yes.
Fewer seats or fewer funded seats?
Well, those are the seats that, yeah, it's the same thing as far as I'm concerned. The budget that, so the way the preschool budget is, and it doesn't make sense, but bear with me. Even though I have to, included in the budget document that was uploaded to the state website, there is a preschool section and everybody can see it, but the Office of Early Childhood sends, bear with me, an Excel workbook that I then have to manipulate. But it's, the funding is based on 217 kids. So they figure out the amount per pupil times 217 kids. And let's just say that number is, I think for us it's like a little over $4 million. So they put the $4 million, so that's your total budget. And you can't exceed it, even if you wanted to, right? So they have it locked in, the number of seats and the amount per pupil that is being funded. That is your basically your total preschool budget.
Can you tell me what is our current preschool enrollment? Just, I don't remember, and it's usually not parsed out.
Yeah, Meredith is pulling it up right now.
Thank you.
Because it does fluctuate rather often.
Yeah, just snapshot in time.
I have a question about the state aid piece. So the state said it was giving us X amount of money, is giving us 1.5 million more, but then we're overfunded. No,
Yes.
Right.
Sorry. The numbers are very
then
similar.
We're
so.
going to be, I guess, essentially penalized in the coming years until it goes back down.
Yes, or unless
Then
enrollment
why would
goes,
they-
enrollment goes up by some
Right.
force.
How does that happen? Like,
Yeah.
why would they do that then? Why
Well-
would they give us more if we're just going to be paying for it later?
Because back in the day, it was called hold harmless. Sorry, back in the day, I think this started under, bear with me, I think Chris Christie. Instead of just taking the state aid away, they would like hold districts harmless. So you've heard me say the last 10 plus years, we're flat funded. So instead of taking it away, they just didn't give you any more. So that's basically what's been happening to Collingswood since I say maybe 2018, 2019. We're kind of like flat funded or held harmless, meaning they're not taking it away, but they're not giving us anything. This year they actually took it away. We were limited. The Murphy administration last year and the Cheryl administration this year did the same thing where they made a point to not penalize any district more than 3%. So nobody got cut more than 3%. But those that received state aid, I don't think anybody got more than 6%. So it was like a sweet spot. So I envision probably another 3% next year and another 3% the year after that. So yeah, but they just held us harmless. They never really took it away. But again, the funding formula did change during that time. So now they're actually looking at how you're funded. They're looking at the wealth of the town, which they never did before. It was never a problem, right? We never had to worry about over, under, because they never really factored in, the value of the property in the town. But now that's part of the formula, and they are looking at that.
So, and this might go to what Megan was saying as well, like in the eyes of the state, because of property values and because of, like you said, quote, the wealth of the town, we should, according to the state, be able to fully fund our district, even though our local share is below what the state believes us to be getting.
Correct, and that's where lawmakers, whatever, they say that, but then they cap our ability to ask the taxpayers at 2%. So, my opinion is if that's going to be the case, then give us the ability to ask, and if the town says no, then that's one thing, but at least give us the opportunity to ask and have the discussion. But when you're capped at 2%, but yes, that is true.
You mentioned that the state could increase our aid based on enrollment going up. Does it have to go up exponentially? Does it have to recover? Like it was 138 down. Do we get 100 extra students and then they increase it next year? Like, do we know how that works?
Number one, if we had an increase in enrollment, the enrollment adjustment would be they let us increase taxes because we have more kids. It doesn't necessarily mean we get more state aid. We could potentially. The issue is when they look at state aid, they're always they're looking at a 5-year weighted average of kids. So we would have probably to generate a sizable increase in state revenue, we probably have to be increasing enrollment several years in a row for there to be enough of a percentage for Trenton for it to trigger. But our enrollment's been fluctuating more in the last 2 or 3 years on the downward slide. But when they look at state aid, it's the 5 years.
Ms. Coleman, just did I hear correctly? You said the enrollment adjustment thing that would trigger would be that we could then raise local taxes.
Yes.
Over the 2%.
Correct. Just like the healthcare adjustment, there's a few things that are included in the state funding law that allows you to go above 2% without any, acts of God. And one would be the healthcare adjustment, and the second would be an enrollment adjustment. I have appealed to the state, and when we meet with Lou Greenwell tomorrow, it is on my list of things, is they should let us do that for special education costs that go beyond a certain dollar amount or that are outside of our control. But we get a lot of pushback when we say that. But those are things that are hard to plan for, that we're morally and statutorily obligated to provide, and that, we should be allowed to do that in that case too. But yeah.
You said enrollment is weighted. How does the state weight the enrollment? And do the high school students, are they weighted more than the?
Yes. So it starts out, they don't weight pre-K. They weight kindergarten 1 to 5, 6 to 8, 9 to 12, and then there's an additional weight added for special ed categories.
So then specifically to special ed, because we have actually talked about having inclusive schools grants, and I'm trying to balance these reduction areas with what our model will be going forward in that space. Can you share, has our special ed portion of state aid reduced, or is it the same? Well, I understand the state aid is special ed, equalizer, like the local versus state, transportation security. So of those, which one's actually getting shifted the most would be helpful, because I'm trying to really ground myself in the areas we've prioritized, inclusive school model. What will that look like? Understanding the levers we are presenting here.
So our state aid shifted in the following categories. Hold on a second. So, transportation was cut, and special ed was cut. We were reducing special ed from prior year.
And is that number based on need, enrollment in the program, or is it another calculation that is difficult to understand? Or is it based on our enrollment and students who are in our services we can offer internally, or is it, what generally drives that, just for my own?
It's based on enrollment.
Okay.
Yeah, they don't, every fall, I complete the ASSA, which is the application for state school aid. Not that they fund it that way, but I count every child in the district, and I count them by grade, and if they're special ed, by special ed category, and every additional service that they're given. So the state does that and have that information.
So considering the fact that high school is weighted more, would the decrease at the high school level have impacted our aid this year?
Yeah, it is possible. I mean, like I've attached into the agenda, again, I'm not a calculus professor, but the 9 pages of the state aid calculation. It is very confusing. Yeah, and with us having less high school children, that's also affecting our tuition,
So, yeah, and I just.
which is another big source of revenue for us, obviously.
So, Ms. Coleman, I think that was going to actually be my question. As we have discussed enrollment, we specifically are seeing reduction in those who are coming into our district, thus tuition, which is part of, versus kind of the ones in our immediate community. Is that an accurate assessment of the slope is Woodland, Oakland is reducing far faster, for lack of a better word, than Collingswood? Would that be a fair statement? Or are they all going at the same rate of reduction?
Oakland seems to be holding steady. I would say probably Woodland and Collingswood. We're seeing less resident children in Collingswood, but I know the number of Woodland children that are coming over, I think it has been less in the last couple of years.
This is something that we had discussed during committee of the whole last week. And so I think to reiterate here too, I think the most impactful change in enrollment in terms of our year-to-year budget would be tuition-paying students. So that would be the decrease. If we're seeing fewer students coming from Woodland, then that has a very immediate impact on the year-to-year budget. Whether it's right or not, the specific sort of enrollment fluctuations within Collingswood, I would argue, do not actually affect the state aid amount, because the state considers Collingswood way overfunded, and there's that 3% decrease cap that Ms. Coleman spoke about previously. So what that means is that the state should be cutting, a couple million of our state aid, but they're only cutting 300,000 because of that 3%. And so really the change in enrollment within Collingswood won't necessarily affect our state aid right now, because we're already capped in our losses because of the 3% cap there. But the change in enrollment, let's say from Woodland, that would be that is actually a very impactful year-to-year impact on our
Yes. Running budget. That is accurate, and not just what I'm able to book as a revenue, but if they overpaid, we now have a liability on our books where I have to pay them back. So it's kind of like a double whammy. It's less revenue, and then I'm paying money back for kids who didn't come.
Do we have any idea why the enrollment has gone down in Woodland? Has there been conversations with our neighbors about what's going on?
So projected 20 students opted to go to Camden County Technical School. They have some new CTE programs that are attracting students, and transportation. So those are the two variables. When we met with the superintendent over in Woodland, those were the two items that she shared with us.
So two things. When kids opt to go to Camden County Tech, we pay for that transportation, or is that?
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. No, it's not. No, it's not. No, Collingswood kids who go to tech school, we pay, the tuition's $32.11 per pupil, and then I contract with Camden County Ed Services for a bus. Yeah.
You know-
I'm sorry, you're talking Collingswood kids or Woodland kids?
Collingswood kids, so Woodland
Yeah,
pays
that's
for
what I
Woodland, and then Collingswood pays for Collingswood, and Oakland pays for Oakland. Is that how
Yes.
that works? Okay.
Yes, yes.
And another quick question. In terms of the projected enrollment, is there a way to increase those numbers, like to come in low instead of coming in high? You know what I mean? Like I feel like we're thinking we're going to get 30 kids and we get 20 kids. Why are we not projecting 20, and then if we have 30, we have an increase?
We did do that this year, but the law, I did adjust it this year, but it's incumbent upon the district sending to me. So what the code says is the sending districts have to notify me, I think it's by December 15th, of the number of kids, right? And then we get our certified tuition rates in January, then we set the new tuition, and then it's locked in, like 50 kids at this dollar amount, here's your tuition expense, my tuition revenue, and both our budgets, Trenton like matches them up, kind of like the IRS does with the tax returns. Trenton matches them up to make sure that we match. So it's really incumbent upon the sending district telling me the right number. But I do try, in the areas that I can control in that, in the sending districts, is our number of resource center periods. So those kids that are in and out of resource, we bill for that, and that fluctuates constantly. I always have like a running 5-year average of the number of periods, and I'm constantly adjusting that number because that's within our control. Yeah, I really rely on getting that number from the other district.
One of my questions or thoughts that I'm having up here is like, what is our strategy to address some of these items, which is, the borough, local fair share, and how are we moving the needle? We focus a lot on rec plans and facilities, which feels like more money, not more investment. So how are we moving the needle there? And then enrollment and attracting students. And I would ask that as we move throughout the course of the rest of this year, that we understand what are we doing to really attract students and retain our students, because I still don't, as I look at this list of reductions, I'm trying to make sure that at the end of the day, the excellence that we are doing here is really top of mind for families. But we are still getting confronted with increasing reductions each year, or consistent reductions each year in enrollment, and I just want to understand our strategy to try to push back on that, because I don't know that we have spent much time up here talking about what are we going to do differently. And I also want to really push, and I will hold the frame of, I cannot imagine that we are expecting to tax our way out of this gap. And so would like to make sure we are really clear about what does next look like, because it is pretty significant, even though we approved an increase last year, right? This board, I sit with that, and want to make sure that we can rationalize these reductions relative to what we thought we were doing, we could shore up last year.
So I think it's important to, since we talked about last year, the gap last year was 8.7 million gap between local contribution. The board last year approved the application to request $6.1 million. The state approved 3.8. They cut the $2 million out because the things that we requested, they said, did not qualify as a thorough and efficient education. Things like athletics, things like extracurricular activities, things like social workers, media specialists, classroom aides. We argued that was inconsistent with the spirit of the law, but it did not change the approval. In terms of long-term, I'm not in a position to speak for the borough. What I would say is that municipalities and school districts are all struggling with the increase in operational costs. And so, yes, local contribution is one of multiple variables, but we should not assume that the borough is sitting on millions of dollars in surplus that they can just hand over to the district. And so I just want to make sure I'm being very clear. It's going to take a comprehensive community approach in order to strike the appropriate balance, and the decrease in operational expenses, the consolidation of effort between the district and the borough, and parallel to that, moderate, consistent increases in overall revenue, at least to be consistent with the rising cost of inflation. And so much more discussion is needed between our entire community.
Zaki asked a question about enrollment decreasing and what we're doing to address that, and I didn't hear, like, are we doing, stay through, like, marketing, all of that, like, addressing, when kids leave middle, go to high, like, staying in Collingswood, being a Collingswood Panther your whole career, and how we're, emphasizing that for our rising 9th graders, rising 10th graders, rising 11th graders.
So, great question. I think it's also important for us to actually encapsulate what does this mean. And so projected enrollment are numbers that are coming in order to configure the budget. They don't necessarily directly reflect actual enrollment or students on the books. And so if we go back to 2023, 14 students, rising 9th graders transferred out. 2024, 30 transferred out. 2025, 38 transferred out. And so for the greater part of the last 4 decades, we have had a myriad of families that have transferred to other schools. 92% of the transfers are to parochial schools, specifically for families that have a desire for their children to have parochial education. And so when we think about what can we do, the things that we can do is to continue to offer high-quality programs and opportunities for kids. Case in point, we have a phenomenal performing arts program, as evidenced by our students that performed over the weekend. Those things attract additional students. We have we have a continued emphasis on inclusion, making individuals feel welcome like they belong. But we also have some challenges that we're still hoping to reconcile as it relates with culture and climate within our schools, specifically related to the secondary campus. And I think that some of the items have been addressed by our administrators at the secondary campus in terms of making students feel welcome, getting a handle on culture and climate. In terms of marketing, that's a whole other beast. We are combating misinformation, toxicity, and unfortunate bias within our school community that has to be addressed. And so until we're able to reconcile that Collingswood High School looks different in 2026 than it did in 2006, and that is not a bad thing, we're going to continue to have the question mark out there. Academically, Collingswood High School has continually improved both academically and in college-going culture. We've increased the percentage of students that are going to college on scholarship. We've increased the students that are earning college credits while still in high school, double the rate of the state of New Jersey. We're including more students in all of our extracurricular activities, in our sports, in our academic programs, and those other core things. And so I think that we're going to need a concerted effort within our community to reframe what quality looks like. We're going to have to reframe what our high school looks like today. And the nostalgia of what it looked like 25 or 30 years ago, we want to recognize that there is value in traditions, but I think that we're going to have to come together as a community and figure out more meaningful ways to promote what our students and what our staff are doing right now, and they're making significant progress.
So I have a whole spiel that I will not actually present, but what I did want to remind all of us is that the budget is the most important function, as a Board of Education. And it is our duty to make sure that our budget aligns with the priorities in our community. And looking at the one slide here that talks about reductions, what I really am missing is the financial impact of each one of these bullet points. I don't know how to vote on anything without understanding what the closure of Garfield Elementary School means to the community, or means to our budget. How much are we saving? How much are we saving reducing full-time, part-time positions? How much are we saving, restructuring the secondary campus, and so on? So it would be really helpful to see either a percentage or a number or something that we can tie to actual dollar amounts, so we can make sure that the reductions, nobody wants to see reductions, but I don't, this is just a bunch of bullet points. I really would appreciate seeing how that impacts. Also, what I don't see on here, or maybe some more detail, and hopefully we'll see it in April, but, is there a reduction of non-union personnel? Is administrative, teaching, secretarial support facilities, who does that encompass? Also, is the lease for Good Shepherd still in this budget while we're closing a school and, making class sizes higher for our students? I would like to understand also what pay-to-play means for our families, so we can kind of start having those conversations. So if there's any way to kind of put a dollar amount or something for those reductions, it would be appreciated.
So I'm gonna echo, that was one of my notes I also had here, is if we can get at top line the percent of impact. Because it is, to me, some of the sub-bullets, I will tell you as a parent of a classroom of 25, I don't know that I can accept even one more student in that class. And so I have to push, what does that mean? Is it moving a whole class into a room in another school, or is it saying push students into classes that are already quite high? Because we have celebrated excellence, but I will say we will push our children too far if we keep thinking that the class size can just keep getting bigger and hope it works. So I do think we need specificity here. I do want to, I really appreciate how you have articulated how we are here, the why, the work I'm holding myself and this board and this community to how do we make this less difficult. But I just want to balance some of this. My last question, the Wellness Center, what portion of it was federal dollars versus a local budget? Because I understand it was completely deleted because we have an energy from outside of us that does not believe in well-being and mental health. And so how is that what we're talking about, or how much was still in our budget that we need to account for is what I'm trying to square with that particular bullet. But if we can at a minimum get top line 10%, 15, 20, 30, like something to give us a sense of the impact, so we can really push on the prioritization of which lever goes first, second, or third.
So I want to caution us by making a pretty direct and bold statement. None of this feels good because it's not good. We don't want to make any reductions. But I think that it's also important to encapsulate. We're talking about $3.3 million. We're not talking about a $50,000, $60,000 lease for office space when market value for that is triple the price. We're not talking about one or two positions. We're talking about $3.3 million that had to be reduced from this budget. And in terms of impact, we will be working within schools in order to be able to answer all of those particular questions. The exercise that we're here today focused on is the budget balanced based on the revenues that are available? We are not in a position to talk about ultimate impact broken down by different category until we've gone back to our school leaders and helped to actually craft and structure what that impact will look like. And so when we're talking about the loss of a significant number of positions, yes, there is impact. The exact impact will need to be broken down school by school because we have to make sure first and foremost that every single child within our district has a classroom to go to. And so that work will be done over the next several weeks. And so impact will also be determined over the next several weeks. Details on what some of these line items consist of will also be determined over the next several weeks based on students affected and based on the pending approval from the state to make sure that we're meeting the needs and the values of our community. And so, yes, those details will be made available to the board in the coming weeks. But what happens starting tomorrow is we then go back to our schools and share with our schools where we landed, and then we have to do the restructuring at the individual school level first and then report back to the board.
Can I ask, how will the community be engaged in that conversation? And I'm saying that as someone who would hope to hear if my student's class is going to be bigger before we're welcoming a new student. And so I want to make sure we understand the impact, or how will we communicate? When do we expect to communicate? Because transparently, we're talking about enrollment because we must retain what we have. And I would offer that it could be detrimental to this district if families feel the class size is too big, and how are you going to shore this up? I get it. This is no joke, and I don't think anybody is expecting it. We are deeply feeling this to the core of any child we see on the street. What does this mean to them? And so I'm looking for specificity on when will we know, and how will it be communicated to staff, certainly first, and families who will definitely be affected, right? That's, I think, can we get clarity on what we're anticipating in terms of that communication?
Over the next several weeks, we'll be working closely with our school leaders, and it looks different in each campus. And so our school leaders are going to help us determine what is the most appropriate mechanism for each campus to be able to engage our families, because impact will vary from building to building. And so it'll be important for this next phase to begin taking place. And so I would, from the community perspective, each school community will be engaged over the next several weeks after we have formalized what this actual impact is at each individual school level. Tomorrow morning, we will be communicating district-wide the culmination of the reductions that were shared this evening, and then basically forecasting for our community that further community engagement will be taking place over the next month.
I'd like to jump in also, echo what Ms. Jamuski and Ms. Devine said about having those figures for how much each of those kind of bulleted points save us. I think it is helpful for us to see the magnitude of each of those cuts. In parallel with that too is the question of whether or not there are other options, right? Because I think one of the things I've heard is, well, how much does the closure of Garfield Elementary School and the associated reductions in full-time staff there, how much does that actually save the budget, and is that dollar amount worth it for that, right? And I guess my follow-up question there is, are there other options? Because if there are no other options for cutting, then in many ways, yes, it's good for us to know the amount. But if we don't have any other options, what can we do? My understanding of having been involved in a lot of these discussions, and one of the reasons why we pushed so hard last year to bring in additional revenue, was that there really are no options. And so I guess, Ms. Coleman, just, I know that we've talked before last year about how difficult it is to close a hole of this size. I mean, are there other options in terms of cuts?
No. We struggled through this. This was, in a word, heartbreaking and very stressful. I don't know where we go from here. I'm being as honest as most of you who know me. I speak very frankly, and I am honest. This is not good. This was not good. And speaking to colleagues across the state, there's a lot of districts struggling and doing the same exact thing that we're doing. doesn't minimize what we're doing, but collectively, we're not alone. But I don't know where else we go. So when we developed this list, it was hard getting to that number, even with the items that we spoke about. I don't know that I could do it again. Like, once we do this, and I know that this question's been asked of me a lot, after this, I don't know. And I know I said this to a couple board members. I threw my hands up in the air with Kelly. I'm like, I don't know what to do after this one. Because, you know, something's got to give. Our buildings are not large. So it's not like we cannot continue to do this and just put everybody in our buildings, because our buildings aren't overly large. So we are going to have to, again, after we get through this horrible period, we're going to have to get back to the table and start looking at how we generate more sustainable revenue so we don't have to do this again next year.
And-
But in a word, no. I couldn't have done this without the cuts that have been presented.
And so, one thing is yeah, I think what you've said is that this is a terrible situation in terms of there are very few options for us in terms of cuts, which I think goes back to what was said, which is it's really difficult to cut our way through these things. And understanding that these costs are rising. I mean, we are, it's inflationary costs, right, in terms of all of the costs of materials, of staffing, of
Well, just health
energy,
benefits
of all
alone.
that
If we
stuff.
didn't have, leading into the last 2 years, our average healthcare increase was 8 or 9%. I
Right.
went from 9 to 22% in 1 year. That's over $1 million. So just take that off the table. That would have put us at 2.3. Still not great, but not 3 point. You know what I mean? So just one line item going up by over $1 million is just, it takes your breath away. That's, you know, and thank God we're not in the state health benefits plan. There are some school districts that are at 33%. But that one line item, that's, you know, if you take that off the, again, it's an outlier, but if you take that off the table, we're still not great. But that $1 million swing, that's a tough one.
And
So we have to stay that, and I did say this when I met with lawmakers, they have to do something about the health benefits, because right now they're just pushing it on to the taxpayers. So they have to do something about it.
And so what I'm hearing too is that I know that, you know, from listening to the board discussion here, there is definitely some concern among board members about how, you know, some of these cuts may make it difficult to retain students, and while also, you know, rightfully pushing for us to do our best to retain students. And so I think this is one of those chicken and egg problems where, as a board, one of the things that we, I think, can and should do is, you know, if we can't purely cut our way out of this, we also need to ask ourselves, are we willing to ask the community whether or not they would like to contribute more to our revenue? If we truly believe that larger class sizes are going to send our district into a death spiral of enrollment, then is that something which we as a board are willing to discuss and see, hey, do we try to go out for referendum, ask the town whether or not they're willing to contribute, we are willing to contribute more to keep those teachers in the classroom, to pay for this healthcare, to try to keep these class sizes smaller. So I think that is part of the responsibility of the board, to try to be on that part of the equation, because that's one of our actual powers is to ask the community about that. And so it seems like we have to attack this from both sides, not just from the cut sides, but to ask, you know, when and if and how we would be able to ask for more revenue to fund schools.
So sorry.
No, go
I was just gonna ask, because during the presentation, you said legally we've met the cap of what we can do, and Roger is mentioning going out to the town. What does, for everybody here, those mechanisms look like. What can we ask for in those things? Because I know that there are parameters, so that we could bridge some of this gap and we're not losing staff, blah, 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 blah.
When Governor Murphy was governor, so there's 4 times a year that school districts can go out for referendum. And typically in the past, it was referred to like for capital projects. But they expanded it after the Robbinsville situation that those of you who tuned in last year heard me talk about. So they did expand it to allow school districts to add to ask their towns if they would contribute to the operating budget. So it is possible to go out. There'll be 4 times September. I'm going to do this again. I'm going to get it wrong. September, December, January, March. So and the general election in November. So between now and the next budget cycle, we could ask 4 times. The board could, listen, I'm not saying ask for 10, but you could ask for whatever you wanted. But my recommendation would be to tie it into our local fair share, because it's all over our website, it's all over the fair funding, it's all, it was the Close the Gap website. It's what we're measured by. It's how Trenton measures us against our peers. But to at least get to what Trenton determines is what taxpayers should be paying, at least to get to that number. So that number that Fred was talking about, I think was 4.6. I would start there as a discussion point. Because then we are meeting, because there are some districts that are above their local fair share, so some are like 130, 140, 150% funded by their local. We're not even at the 100. We're not even at the starting gate that some of our other compatriots are. So that's probably where I would open the door for discussion. And then obviously, the board and the community would have to decide what's best. Knowing that we are very much overtaxed in the state of New Jersey, but again, we also value education and our children very much. So it's something we're going to have to talk about and struggle with together and come to the right decision as a community, I think, on this one.
So what were the months again?
I know, I'm going to get it wrong every time. September, December, January, March, and November if it's a general election year.
Okay. So
yeah.
this idea of an operating referendum would not affect what we're currently discussing.
No, let's say, no.
Yeah.
So let's say it passes in September. Taxes could be raised as early as January.
Okay. So half of the year.
Because I believe that's when the new tax bills come out. But for all intents and purposes, it would be for the next budget year going forward.
Okay.
So as not to confuse my budget and the borough's budget, it would be for the next school year going forward.
I appreciate you asking those follow-up questions, Stacy and Roger, for bringing up that kind of, the forward-thinking, solution-oriented thinking that I think this board is also responsible for. And I really I know this is a very long-term discussion for us to start to engage in. I appreciate the work that Kelly and Zakia have been doing in opening the door to regionalization, which I know is a very long process, but it is something that state legislators are talking about. I know Ms. Coleman has been having conversations about that as well. But, in the meantime, and we've talked about this, with Danielle in our regionalization meeting, having some of those conversations with our neighbors in Oakland and Woodland and perhaps some other areas, including Haddon Heights, Haddon Township, who are also facing the same kind of cuts that we are facing and are also facing continued years and years of drops in state aid. And so alongside potential stopgap measures, asking the community to support our teachers and instruction, I think there needs to be a continued effort to really engage some of our neighbors. So I appreciate the groundwork that we've started to lay for that.
And I do appreciate the focus on solutions, and I will hold myself accountable for maybe not prioritizing having a plan to close the gap before today, right? So like that's what I'm sitting with very respectfully. We've talked about rec plan, secondary campus, not probably appreciating how big this would be so that we were out socializing a potential referendum, right? Like that is the balance we need to strike as we move forward the rest of this year, that we are prioritizing the right conversations with the community, because frankly, we already are writing on the wall. There will be more that we need to go for in the future, so we need to make sure we're really laser focused on those items that will reduce the need for us to get to this level of cut. And some may be, right, so I just want to offer that I'm also just asking that as we proceed throughout this school year and the next, that we're really focused, our priorities are going to drive towards a different kind of budget conversation ideally going forward, so we can support and offset this level of stress that we probably could have been walking eyes wide open into a little bit more, is what I'm really charging us to do as we move forward. And that, you know, that means some other plans will not be sustainable right now until we can get this shored up, right? Like, to be really direct. And that is my position in this moment. But I do appreciate that solution, and really partnering with the borough to better understand what is possible from their perspective as well.
So, I do have a question, but I want to let everybody know that we understand we're not just talking about the kids. We know that you are a family. We know that our communities are rooted. We're going to do everything we can to pull ourselves together and try to stay focused on solutions, but I want you to know that we care. My question is about cap sizes in classrooms. Are there cap sizes for classrooms that we have to be concerned about?
Meredith, you want to answer that?
Yes, there is a board policy. The specific number is escaping me, but I can reference it mostly from memory. It is that we shall, in grades K and 1, aim to stay under 25. Kelly, you asked about class size caps, right? I just want to make sure I heard you correctly. That we shall aim to stay under 25 in kinder and first grade. And there's another range then up to 30 in the grades above that. Again, I'm doing that from memory, but I can triple check that. There are some caveats and allowances if we should need to depart from that board policy. That are also spelled out in the policy. Hang on, I'll direct our attention to it just so that we can reference it.
Is kindergarten capped at state law as well? State law caps kindergarten sizes?
If you're a Title I school, yes. If you're not a Title I school, it's an internal, aspirational number to stay below.
Meredith, is that one teacher, as if there's 30 kids in that class and there's no aide, just one teacher for 30 kids?
That's correct.
I have a question as far as like the kids. So what exactly does that mean for like the relocation of these kids? Like where will the kids just be kind of like dispersed throughout the different schools, or will they be sent to like, I'm kind of confused on it because I don't know, I guess I also probably don't really understand it, but like what does that mean for the kids? Like are they just going to get dispersed throughout different schools?
So the current kinder through 4th grade students at Garfield will be carefully and thoughtfully reviewed, kid by kid, family by family, siblings obviously connected together in partnership with looking at current seat availability at our other 4 schools. where we have 5 homeroom classes, 1 homeroom class at Zane, Newby, Sharp, 2 homeroom classes at Tatum. So there are 5 general education homeroom classes in each grade level of the remaining 4 elementary schools, along with self-contained classrooms at Zane, Newby, and Sharp. So when we talk about our total enrollment in a grade, some students are in a self-contained setting, and some are in a general education setting, and some are in an inclusion setting. And so we are in the midst of spring IEP annual reviews that will determine special education students' programmatic needs for next year, that will in part drive seat availability at our 4 remaining elementary schools. And so we will be closely collaborating with the Garfield families and the other 4 school communities to answer that question of where are the new school assignments for current Garfield students.
Based on the numbers that we have right now, if we were to remove all of the children out of the Garfield school, do we have enough space in terms of the cap sizes and all the other classrooms available to house all of these children?
Meredith, are you done looking for policy? No, you don't have, that's fine. We don't have to wait for it. I just wanted to ask another
Policy
question.
2312.
Thank you. Do you want to talk any more about that? I have another question, but I don't want to interrupt the conversation. Okay. So we've been talking about healthcare, how expensive that is. Understand, I mean, everybody's deductibles are going through the roof. Do we have a number on the increase of healthcare amounts? And it's going to tie into a comment. So
The total expenditure, you mean?
yeah, like, or the difference between last year and this year. And because I know we talked about this on Thursday, that we are increasing our tax levy because the state allows us to increase based on the insurance. So the difference between last year and this year is roughly 1.5 million. Go ahead.
Okay, so healthcare costs in the current budget year are $7,331,000.
Okay.
Next year's going to be $8,521,000.
Okay, so the 1.5 covers most of.
Yeah, so we generated the healthcare adjustments a little over $1 million,
Okay.
and then the tax levy was like $405,000.
does the
That got to the
2% plus
1.5.
that. Okay.
Yeah.
And then what I'm asking is just to kind of wrap my head around, because if we weren't allowed to increase the additional money, we would actually be at, we're at 3.3 now, so we would
Yeah,
be at
4.4.
1 point, yeah,
Yep.
okay.
Yep.
Okay, so because we're allowed to do that, it's beneficial. I mean, I know it's a tax increase for our families, and I'm not minimizing that, but it's also helps us to not cut more. So I just wanted to make sure, that's not, the
Right.
3.3 or 3.5 is after that healthcare cost.
Yes.
Got it, all right, thank you.
Yeah.
Just
No, you're good.
talking
You're good.
through it and making sure.
Actually, thank you for asking that question, because my comment was, since we are going for so much more than the normal 2% levy, is there a communication plan to the borough as a whole about why we're asking for that money, what that money is for? That's been a constant question in the past from community members, that what are we paying for? Where is that money going? What is it being used for? And in the absence of information, there tends to be a lot of misinformation created. So what's the communication plan for making sure that Collingswood as a borough understands that $1.5 million tax ask, what the excess is, and what we're doing with it?
So, Chris, thank you for the question. By the end of the week, we will send out, we'll be sending out a letter to the community tomorrow morning. We'll be sending out the full presentation with an attached FAQ by the end of the week that breaks down some of those types of questions. That breaks down like what's included within that, why do we qualify for that, what does it encompass?
So, we do not have numbers that will give us an idea of what these planned cuts will do to that 3.3 million. But, I know I had I had thought about this before. So if we are telling the community that we have to close the school, then what will be done with that property? Because it's, you know, and I know the plan for the referendum that failed was to sell that building. What is the plan for that?
Board will need to deliberate and discuss next steps with that.
So I would, I appreciate the question and also agree we'd have to talk through that. And with our solution mindset, right, that it's an asset now that is available to help us plan in the future. And I think we're just trying to, you know, dot our i's and cross our t's around on the what's the list of solutions. So it's more referendum, sale, we think if possible, where possible, right? There's all of these levers that we're trying, we will need to balance as we have very focused conversations after this one, right? Like I'm holding that that's the stuff we're gonna be talking about going into the rest of this year, right? Because I would offer, if we hold those numbers in our mind, that should get us through some of these gaps that are articulated in this presentation. And so I think I want to make sure we myth bust the stories and narratives that we're creating, even in this I'm like quick math trying to make sure like, hey, does that building help us not come back to all of you and myself for more money, right? Like I think we need to be really clear about what those opportunities are that are in our control and outside of our control that we need to go back to. So that is that messaging we should be really intentional about articulating. I guess in terms of the communication to the community, I just want to echo or understand our broader community who just got told we did this, we were able to offset the some of the expense this year with last year's tax increase we'll hear, and we still have to move forward with these changes to the broader borough community via a letter from the district to every resident. I just want to make sure I understand, or is it going to be in like a article, we would assume?
First, the letter will go to the school community. We will request the borough to use their community messaging, to use their network also. I also want to caution us in terms of disposal or selling of a district asset is a one-time infusion of revenues. And so we cannot build an annual operational budget off of one-time funds. And so any of those funds would help us to shore up and to provide a higher degree of stability in long-term financial planning, just so that we're all thinking about, I mean, unless there's a lovely developer, High Online, if you want to pay us $20 or $30 million for one of our buildings, we were more than happy to have a conversation. But I think that in terms of the long term, taking a very proactive but balanced approach to looking at all options to be able to make sure that we are shoring up our operational expenses, while parallel to that, thinking about what are appropriate ways to generate additional revenue that does not continue to lay the burden at the feet of our homeowners. I think that's our next step.
Ms. Coleman, I just wanted to ask a question. You mentioned that the maintenance reserve is fully used in this
Yes.
line item. So it's zero today. And those funds support what? We need to put a finer point on. This means if we need another set of stairs, if we need something fixed, we do not have the funds and reserve to pay for it. This budget uses every penny we have
For maintenance reserve, yes.
So a leak, is that what we're describing? I mean, if you get an insurance claim, that's lovely, but I'm just offering like what kind of, right, I just want to be really clear that
So
we have no cushion at this
We
point based on
budget
this budget.
through the Buildings and Grounds Department, and it's in the detailed budget that's online. There's a whole building section. So the maintenance reserve helps fund all of those things. My hope is, as the school administrators can attest, I froze spending very early this year, and I'm making everybody jump through hoops to buy stuff, because my hope is to put some money back into maintenance reserve in June. But right now, with this budget, it will be depleted. That is correct. If there's a project that needs, we do have capital reserve, so if there is an emergency, let's say, it's an application to the county office in the state to be able to withdraw the capital. Yeah.
With this closure of a school, reduction in staff, we're looking at increased stress on the staff that's here. Are we focusing on retention of our staff that we are keeping? Are we creating an environment where they feel comfortable and safe? I love my children's teachers. I don't want to see them go. So it's just, if we have a plan, it's articulated.
So for the community, as you can see, this is very emotional for us all. And so I think that it's important to note that the majority of us that are sitting on this dais are not only residents, but we are also parents. I have 2 children who attend our schools. I am a Garfield parent. And so we don't go into these decisions lightly. These decisions personally affect my family. At the end of this meeting, I will be having a very difficult and painful conversation with my 3rd grader, explaining why Daddy is making a recommendation to close her school and what does that mean for her friends. And so I think that in terms of staff retention, we care about all of our staff. We can definitely do a better job of demonstrating what that care looks like. And I think that the best thing that we can do is to work alongside our staff in order to figure out what this transition actually means, to hear directly from our staff, and that's our commitment, is that what we're asking for folks to do is not easy. It's not comfortable, but we, at this particular stage in the development of our district, we have very few choices and options as it relates with closures, staff reductions, and funding streams. And it's going to be incumbent upon us to work collaboratively to figure out what does this mean for next year. And so when we talk about the adage of doing more with less, that is actually false. We don't do more with less. We do less with less. And what that means is that we get very detailed and very specific on what are the most important things that we can focus on, leveraging the expertise of the professionals in our buildings, and we do those things, and we do those things better than anybody else. We're going to work to the degree possible to try not to overburden as best we can our staff that are directly impacted by these changes, but it's going to be a work in progress, and it's going to be extremely hard. And so I believe that the way that we honor our staff is to work collaboratively with them, listen to their feedback, and try to co-construct what our next transition looks like.
So, knowing last year that it was, I think, after the first budget submission came out, that the state and the lawmakers let districts know that there would be a tax levy incentive aid program to allow us to try to close that local fair share gap. If there is somehow a miracle chance that program comes out again, are we, I guess, as a board, able to meet in those assuming quick succession, to come together and discuss whether or not we as a board believe that we should go out for that program once again to avoid these cuts?
Yes, we would meet if that were the case, yeah. So on the topic of collaborating with the community and the staff, I just want to let everybody know that we do have regular roundtable discussions that we are trying to have at various locations across the district this year. We just had one recently in the LMC. On that topic, just FYI, we are going to need to reschedule our April roundtable discussion because I believe that is Passover, so we need to change that. But we will try to reschedule for another day in April to, if anybody wants to come out and talk to us. I encourage the community to come talk to us because it's a less of, it's not a formal setting, it's informal. There is not a quorum of board members there, so there's only about 4 or 5 of us, and you can have some more in-depth conversations with us that come up at those discussions. I also want to let everybody know that there is a general CBOE contact email that you can reach out to us if you have concerns or questions, and anything that you send to us goes directly to Zakiya and I, and then we forward that directly over to the rest of the board. So, there are ways to reach out and engage with us about your concerns, and I just want you to be aware of that.
I just have one last question. I just have one last question about, like different programs being cut, or being closed. There was mention of the wellness center being closed, and my question is, what does the closure of the wellness center mean? And like, what service will be provided for the students who rely on the wellness center? Like, is there going to be another program that's implemented in place of this? Because I feel like a lot of students rely on this as far as speaking their mind and kind of like having a place to go that is safe to talk and speak up about their feelings. Especially because, like students are growing, not like through high school, students are growing not just physically but mentally as well, and a lot of them deal with challenges. And, not everybody feels like there's a safe place that they can go. So does the closing, is there going to be something else implemented for these students that rely on this?
So Kenneth, a great question. The unfortunate closure was precipitated by the cancellation of the federal grant. Initially, in 2022, when we were awarded the grant, it awarded $970,000 a year for mental health services and support, with an opportunity for renewal as long as you adhered to the goals and the objectives. We could not have anticipated that our grant would be canceled. And so what I would say is that when we start the process of going back and meeting specifically with our middle and our high school leadership team, understanding the impact, understanding the need, working alongside our counseling and our mental health staff that are on campus to determine what's our capacity and then what that transition needs to look like in preparation for September. And so there will be a degree of support. We're just not able to speak to at what depth the support will look like until we've met with the leaders on campus.
Dr. McDowell, I just want to make sure I'm really clear. The closure of the wellness center is directly related to the federal funding reduction. So that is almost, it was going to have to happen because we don't have the capacity within our budget to absorb that program, correct? So I just want to make sure, as we ask for what portion will impact what, this was already kind of outside of our budget and ability.
Correct.
Okay, just making sure.
Yeah.
Does anybody else have any more comments or questions up here?
Meredith, can I ask another question? And this is probably already known, but I just need more clarity. Is every staff member from Garfield, are they being able to go to another school at all, or is that just?
Yeah, we're not going to comment on specific personnel in this public setting, but yes, as every spring, we work strategically to work through all of those processes, Danielle. It's about as specific as I can be at this time.
All right, I just want to let everybody know that we are going to come out of committee of the whole right now, which means that when you come up for public comment, this is our time to listen. We will not be answering questions or talking back to you, but we will be taking a lot of notes. and we will do our best to follow up on the back end with your concerns. And again, there are other ways to reach out to us. You can come to the roundtable discussions. We will be announcing when the next one is. And there is also a general board contact email that you can reach out to. We can get you that. I don't have it off the top of my head, but we can get that for you. But we will be listening today, and we will not be talking back during public comment. So at this time, I'm going to make a motion to exit committee of the whole.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, so we're going to move on to section 5, future dates and miscellaneous information. We're going to move on pretty quickly now. Please take a look at the miscellaneous dates and information. Just an FYI, that roundtable discussion on April 2nd is no longer happening. We're going to reschedule that, and we'll keep you posted on another date. And there are a lot of other events around the schools that if you need to add anything into your calendar, that's a good reference for it. We're going to move on to section 6, routine business, to approve the minutes of the meeting. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
The meeting of the February 18, 2026 and February 26 for the regular board meeting. Committee of the whole and regular board meeting. All in favor?
Aye.
At this time, we're going to move on to our student reports. So we have, I think, Chris and Kenny here tonight to report.
Good evening, everyone. So while Kenny logs in, I'm going to kind of start a beginner winter sports report on some of the highlights of the season. Mainly our girls basketball team. They had an incredible season. They held a scoring record over 1,300 points for the whole season across 33 games. Three of the star players, Tatum Hinson, Nora Roseborough, and Grace Ifey, who together scored over 1,100 points of their 1,300 points. Tatum Hinson scored over 550 of those points, holding the school record for most single points in the season. Nora Roseborough with over 400 and Grace Ifey with over 240. And then as well as Sophia Angelucci with the most rebounds with over 200 rebounds. So brand new coach for the season, Coach McEwen, and just a phenomenal out-of-the-gate season. And Kenny has a more in detail report.
I will be going over the kind of like the sports preview for the spring sports. So first up, we have softball, who is under new management, with Ashley Pence being the head coach. Their first game will be Tuesday, March 31st against Haddon Township. And then moving on to the baseball team, there's new management as well there with head coach Paul Woodley. The first game is April 7th against Haddon Township as well. The boys volleyball team is coached by Kevin Lamb. Their first game is March 27th against West Windsor Plainsboro. The tennis team is coached by Wayne Pfeiffer. The first game is March 30th against Haddon Heights. And the lacrosse team is coached by Aaron Waller, and their first game will be April 1st against Millville. And I apologize for the late question, but my question, I have a question about the sports becoming pay to play. What exactly makes the sports pay to play?
So we won't have that conversation tonight. Further discussion is needed. We're working with the athletic department in order to assess participation and what sports may or may not potentially be affected.
Thank you.
So, and then my usual report, I give out the student survey. Students are ready for spring break. March is a very painful month. No breaks, no nothing, and juniors are especially burnt out with taking the NJGPA testing last week. So we're all ready for that nice spring break to come. So this form that I had was heavily concentrated around computer science. When I came back from my injury, I had several students come up to me, one student in particular, Max Mullen, who started a student petition to get signatures for to advocate for bringing back computer science. Now with all this discussion, I know it's a little more difficult, but I wanted to bring up the overall student interest in the class. There are over 80 signatures for the petition to bring it back, which is of the enrollment that I saw up there of 613 students. It's 13% of the student body is interested in bringing back computer science. I went ahead and I pulled stats from the Bureau of Labor Statistics for the job outlooks of computer science fields. Computer scientists have a 20% job outlook for the next decade, 9% overall for computer-based jobs, and the total job outlook for all other occupations is 3%. So computer-based jobs are well above the average job outlook. The salaries for computer research scientists, low end 80 grand, high end 230, average $140,000 a year. So the point is being able to offer subjects to our students that can offer them very rewarding careers and a lot of different ranges. As seen in the recent retrospect article for the town, it covered the February 26th meeting where a vote was held that cut computer science from the course catalog, even with some decent student interest. At a meeting on February 3rd about concerning unification, computer science was brought up, and it was stated that in order to bring a class back, it would need 50% enrollment, which is the average class size of 24 means 12 students. We have well over 12 students interested in it, which would hopefully push it to bring it back even further with student interest in it. Like just majority student interest in a class should be the reason for bringing it back. And like I said, I didn't have much part in the petition. It was all student-led by Max. And on top of the 80 signatures from students, we had a grand total of 109 that I checked earlier today. The extra 29 coming from parents, alumni, grandparents, 8th graders, and people in the community who work in the tech industry. I know the class had a full course outline with it. We still have the tablets and the iPads left in the computer science room being unused if we are able to get those back. And most importantly, concerning the budget, I did pull up a grant called the Perkins Grant, which is for CTE classes. On public record, it stated that the Collingswood district received $15,151 for 2026. I know that's not a whole lot, especially considering how much we've lost this year. If it's possible to request more or reapply for that grant, that would be a way to help fund the computer science class. I know it's really rough asking for a class to come back in all this, but I did have to make that announcement from the student voices. So that was my main point for the night. CTE classes are important. Computer science is important. I mean, look at this table around us. We've all got most of us have a computer open. It's being live streamed with a computer running it. To be able to teach students that is incredibly important. And from student interest, I believe we should bring it back. And that covers most of it for tonight.
Sorry, there's one more thing that I was going to touch on is the Pause TV program. As many of you know, there was a short stint where we were out of live streaming, but I would just like to say that we are back up live streaming, which I am forever grateful for that. And the internet has been restored in the MacBooks that we have that are essential for the student learning. And one of our teleprompters, which is what helps us run the show smoothly, it's what I'm sure many of you know what a teleprompter is. It reads the lines and it goes up. Has received Wi-Fi, making the show run endlessly smooth. Some of the technical issues that we are still having, though, is with the MacBooks, some of our essential resources have been blocked for use, such as, so personally, when I had done a documentary on the wrestling team, and I used the MacBooks to pull a lot of images off of Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, kind of, to help complete the project. However, when I went onto the MacBook that was given back after they were given back to us, many of these sites that I usually use to pull pictures have been blocked for our use, which I find it quite it's hard to kind of figure out a way around that, because I'm not sure what else we can do as far as kind of like getting that resource back, because I feel like that is such an essential resource. There was, I'll go into a specific clip. There was a clip from the 2022 South Jersey Group 2 final that I had to dig in Twitter for. It took me like 40 minutes to look for this clip. But one thing that I found quite complicating is that if I was at home using that, I would not, and I had a MacBook, I would not be able to take that video to kind of tie my documentary all back together. And another thing that the Pause TV studio needs more help on is the switcher. Our switcher is what we use to switch the cameras back and forth, play videos, or CG, which is the box inserts and the pictures that we use. Our switcher has been damaged and broken, and we ask for help for that, because again, that is another essential thing. The switcher is what makes our show run as smoothly as it does, and it's what makes it kind of like a professional news studio. So one thing that that the TV studio asks is just for a little help with the technical side of things. And that's all I have. Do you have anything else? Thank you.
Thank you both so much. Very informative. And now we're going to move on to section 8, which is the superintendent's report.
I'm going to keep it exceptionally brief, given the weight of what we have been discussing this evening. And so if we go to section 8, 8.01 is the attached enrollment report. February of 2025 was 2,220. February 2026 is 2,197. 8.02, 03, and 04 are the school safety, suspension, and anti-bullying report. And just have a few positive announcements and general remarks. First, just wanted to acknowledge that this month all of our schools participated in Neurodiversity Celebration Week. This is our 4th annual district-wide celebration of brain differences, providing us an opportunity to be able to discuss neurodiversity and disabilities in a strength-based, inclusive way. And so we continue to be proud of the progress that we have made in the area of inclusive practices, and appreciate the community's support as we celebrate the diverse minds within our school community. Again, I would also like to publicly say congratulations to the talented cast of Mamma Mia, and just thank them for another season of performances. We have some exceptionally gifted students and young people that put together what should be award-winning performances. So can we just give them another round of applause, please? We're also very fortunate to have a senior leadership program. This is a program where the young people at the high school, they apply, they interview, and they participate in a campus leadership development program where they not only mentor incoming freshmen, but they also provide mentoring and support to our elementary schools. They do service projects throughout the year, and then each of the senior leaders identifies a passion project. And so all of the senior leaders have passion projects, but the two I'd like to highlight tonight are Phelan Pizzitillo. His senior project this month was at the Collingswood Manor.
His project consisted of holding monthly technology classes to help elderly residents better navigate cell phones, tablets, and laptops. And the second project we'd like to highlight is Adelaide Arvo. Her project was to bring back Culture Fest. And so it took place here in this cafeteria on March 20th. So in partnership with school leaders, the goal was to get as many students as possible to attend. Tables were set up with food samples and different displays of different cultures represented within our school community. And so we would just like to thank all the students that help with these amazing projects, and special thanks to Adelaide and Phelan for their leadership on campus. In addition, we would like to publicly thank the Interact Club for their March Madness initiative. And so this past month, the Interact Club hosted March Madness also at the Manor. And so they were able to purchase a ping pong table for the facility, and they held a ping pong tournament to celebrate. And so we just want to thank all of our students for their continued commitment to service and engaging with different members within our community. In honor of Read Across America this month, students worked hard, and our annual readathons were another success. So far to date, our students have logged in over 315,000 minutes read associated with our Read Across America. And so students earned a variety of prizes for their hard work, including homework passes, extra recess, theme days, pretzel parties, water ice, ice cream, movies, popcorn, glow dances, gaga tournaments, and the like. And then each campus raised considerable funds, which will be used to help support experiences and field trips in the spring. And so we continue to be proud of the efforts that we're making across our school community, and we would just like to publicly thank our parents, teachers, and especially our students for showing up and working hard. And finally, would just like to acknowledge, based on what our student reps talked about, and would just like to congratulate our girls basketball team again, but a special note, this past weekend, the Albert J. Carino Girls Basketball Club of South Jersey, which is an institution that for the last 50 years has honored excellence on and off the court. Ms. Tatum Henson was named first team all group number 2 based on her efforts this year. And so we would just like to congratulate her as well as the girls basketball team for how they represent our community on and off the court. And last but not least, we would like to just point your attention to the back of the room. Our leader, Ms. Niesner, is representing the Collingswood Panther Pantry. This is based on the continued effort in order to support the individual needs of families in Collingswood, Oakland, and Woodland in a confidential and non-judgmental way. And so we support the mission through generous donations from our community. They are accepting non-perishable items. They are also accepting cash or checks in the form of donations. And all proceeds go to help local families in need. And so thank you, Ms. Niesner, and thank you to those who continue to support our pantry. And that concludes my report.
All right, at this time, we are going to move into public comment section, section 9. So you can come up. This is our only public comment section of the night. Whatever you speak on does not have to be on the agenda, okay? Please stand, state your name and address, and keep your comments to 3 minutes or less. The public is reminded that attempts to resolve all concerns and complaints should first go through appropriate staff members and administrators. I believe Ms. Coleman is going to keep time for us. I recognize that everyone is feeling it tonight. There are emotions rising, but we will hold you to the 3 minutes.
Good evening. My name is Mr. Goldberg, music teacher at the Tatum and Garfield Elementary Schools. I am here today speaking on behalf of the district music teachers, Ms. Carlson, Mr. Gross, Mr. Hartung, Ms. Intricasso, Ms. Ludwig, and myself. It is the mission of the Collingswood Public School District's music department to provide every Collingswood student the opportunity to grow through a high-quality, ability-appropriate, universally accessible music education that inspires the continuing study of music. It's been too long. Good to see you all again, and a big welcome to the new board leadership. This evening, I'd like to give you some insight, some behind the scenes into how these music department Board of Education updates are made. The district music teachers have one big shared document which we all edit, add to, delete things before eventually approving the final language by unanimous consent. If we don't get the thumbs up from everyone, then I don't read it. If there is something in need of discussion, we head to the department group chat, which gets used on a daily basis for event planning, resource sharing, program highlights, or just checking in with one another. Early in the morning or late at night, whenever I see that I have about 1,000 more unread messages, I know that the Collingswood Music Department is hard at work, well after hours. Messages like, high school concert is on this date. Oh wait, what if they have siblings going to this elementary event? Hey, how do I fix this cello bow? Does anyone have extra ukuleles not being used? I hear such and such district is doing this. Maybe we can consider something similar. Here are some pictures of what we're doing for Women's History Month. Oh, that looks fun. Maybe I'll use that idea too. Take a look at this new Squishmallow I bought for class. Uh-oh, another Squishmallow. Classic Mr. So-and-so. We owe it to our students and our community to create one cohesive music program that starts in kindergarten and logically progresses up to 12th grade. For this cohesive program to function, it takes a whole village, from us teachers on the ground level to our supervisors to the building leaders, all the way up to all of you sitting before us today. Each level an indispensable part of the process which allows our humble district to shine brightly, even amongst the comparatively larger music departments in the area. It's the investment of time and resources that sustains a program that makes families want to stay in Collingswood Public Schools. With your support, the other music teachers and I look forward to continuing to cultivate the programs that students, community members, and all of you can be proud of. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Karen Tanier, and I've been an English teacher here since 1998. I want to thank all of you. This has been a really tough evening. You love this community, and you are working incredibly hard to do something that is incredibly difficult. And that is what we as teachers do every day. And one of the most difficult things that I, as somebody who tries to teach rhetoric and argument, is to explain to people that two things can be true simultaneously. And the one thing that is unquestionably true is that we are at the mercy of the state and their funding formula, which is unfair. And there are people in this audience who are doing a phenomenal job, and people in front of me who are doing a phenomenal job to try and bring equity to that formula. But the other thing that is equally true is that in these hard times where hard decisions have to be made, those decisions become harder when there is a lack of confidence that our contributions will be accurately expressed to the public. When we have these meetings and we as teachers are encouraged to come without pay on our own time, I mean, I have to get up tomorrow morning, be here at 7:30 to help kids make up work. I'm still here. We do it because we believe that our input will be accurately portrayed to the public. And in the last few years, we have not felt that way. And there are specific incidences where we have had teacher committees about the schedule, and then when the new schedule was set out, it was with our approval. It was not with the approval, and that eventually was taken back. There have been meetings where kids have been told, if you could get those signatures, we guarantee we will put it on the schedule, and it has not happened. That makes it hard for us to trust. You said yourself, you are going to have to go to the community and ask them for some really hard choices. But if we feel that we're not getting the accurate information from the district level administrators, that makes us less willing to make those hard choices, and it makes us less willing to work without pay, which is what we are doing every time we go to a committee meeting. And you are doing the same thing here, which is why I understand that you want to make sure that you are represented accurately to the community, and we as teachers have that same desire. Thank you so much.
Good evening. My name is Kylie Smith. I think we're good. Okay. I'm one of the school counselors at the high school, here to speak along with my amazing other counselors, Mr. Adams and Ms. Goodall. We're speaking specifically on behalf of the counselors in our office. We would like to take this time to clarify some information that was discussed during last month's board meeting. In order to make sure that we are fully supporting the students of the high school, we want to make sure that information given is accurate. Regarding the grading policy, it was stated last month that the grading floor policy in the program of studies was initially created by the counseling office and proposed to district administration. However, that is not accurate. The counseling office was asked by district administration to create a grading floor policy proposal, so we did. Our policy included a grading floor for only the first half of the length of the course. That proposal was rejected. The full year grading floor policy that was included in the program of studies was not proposed by the counseling office, and therefore the statements that our office created and presented the approved policy are not accurate. Additionally, last month a question was raised by the student representative, Kenny, about the computer science program and whether it would run this year. In response, it was stated, 12 students signed up for computer science and the program wasn't sustainable. For reference, during the 24-25 school year, the computer science program had an enrollment of 64 students. Additionally, when we were told that the program would not be running in the 25-26 school year, the counselors had to remove all 52 students who were registered for the program. As you can see, 12 is a vast understatement. It has been stated that student voice drives class options. We've had several programs canceled over the past few years that students have expressed interest in taking. We are extremely concerned about the narrative surrounding canceled classes, so we are looking for clarity and transparency regarding the canceled classes, especially when the numbers do not support that narrative. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Kevin Adams, a member of Collingswood High School's Counseling Department. Numbers have been presented recently in student meetings as well as Board of Education meetings, and to echo my colleagues' concerns about accuracy, I wanted to provide numbers which express student interest in programs prior to them being cut or put on hold. And please use those reference sheets that we supplied to you. Child development, total student requests, 115. Creative writing, 112. Journalism, 72. Public speaking, 47. Digital photography, 192. Foods, 86. Sculpture, 91, and the list goes on and on. We are asking for clarification about program cuts. We want to support our students and their families when it comes to course offerings that will not only pique their interest, but potentially, and Kenny Olson had this experience in his TV program, potentially become a path for them to pursue when it comes to college and career choices. Providing more options can help with our student retention, as opposed to the nearly 50% of Woodland students who are applying to Camden County Tech. Also, thank you. Also, these cuts were well before our current budget crisis. Thank you.
Wayne Rossi, 114 East Palmer Ave. I actually, personally, a computer science graduate from the College of New Jersey. I had the good fortune to have computer science classes in high school. I went to Shawnee High School, which at the time had probably about as many students as the entire Collingswood district. And the thing that always bothers me about these things is that it seems like, yes, I want our students to have all of these advantages. I just don't know how a school district of this size can feasibly offer all of the curriculum that I think is real, that students really deserve. And while I personally, I do feel for the students who want computer science, I think that, you know, it's one of the things that I think points toward what was mentioned briefly during Committee of the Whole, which is regionalization. And it seems to me it's the only way to stop the bleeding, but it's also a path forward that ultimately leads to a lot more and diverse and frankly interesting subject matter, because I really feel I benefited from being in a school that was very large and had a lot of subject matter to offer. I do want to say I always feel I feel like, you know, any kind of school closing is tragic, and I really feel for all the people involved. And I don't think anyone takes it lightly, that part of this, and I hope that what happens also reflects some of the concerns that have come up previously. If we're redrawing catchments entirely, I'd like to see that there's some more concern, some ability to not have inequities between the schools if we're breaking them up between 4 different schools. I think that it's a tragedy, but we can at least make sure that we're ensuring equity in elementary education, which I think is so important for the students generally. So I really wanted to make sure that's in people's minds as this goes forward. But as I said, primarily it's a tragedy. And I'm sorry that you are all dealing with this, because it's hard. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Maxwell Mullen. I live at 221 East Madison Avenue, and I'm here to just talk about computer science as a whole and why we should have it, of course. And I actually chose to go to CEHS other than, you know, other schools in the area because I was excited, you know, to, of course, be with my friends and to study computer science. But, of course, this program was removed. But in this day and age, computer science is an essential course for any high school because, I mean, every single student in the school has a phone with way more computing power than what we use to put people on the moon. And most of you have computers open with even more power. And understanding these computers and phones is essential to even everyday life. But it's also essential to getting a job nowadays. It's been very difficult to get a job with the economy recently, and having a coding language or computer science experience on your resume can help out a ton with getting a job in STEM. An example of this is with engineering. That almost all engineers nowadays use CAD programs, which are computer-aided design programs, and most of those at the level, like at the professional level, need a basic understanding of code at the very least. Another thing, it is extremely difficult to actually teach yourself a coding language because there are just so many of them and they are so intricate that they should be taught in a school. Some of these coding languages are Python, C++, JavaScript, and Swift. Yeah. And also, I found a statute of New Jersey law which requires computer science as a course. It is Section 18A 7C 1.1 of New Jersey statutes states no later than the beginning of the 2018 to 2019 school year, each public school enrolling students in grades 9 through 12 other than a county vocational school district shall offer a course in computer science. So as Chris stated earlier, I did start a petition to get computer science back. And it's gotten over 100 signatures. I think it's at about 110 last time I checked. But yeah, in closing, computers are part of all of our lives, whether we like it or not, so computer science is an essential class. Thank you.
Hello, my name's Meg Walsh. I'm a Garfield parent at 206 Crestmont. Just want to say for the record, you know, if Garfield's closure is inevitable and happening, all of this is going to come down to communication with everybody. Really, really well done communication plan about when things are happening, when we will know. I know that April, May is when the budget passes. If we are told in July what school we're going to, it's going to be a really, really hard thing to figure out if we have multiple kids, multiple drop-offs. So we are entrusting you all here tonight to make good on communication around this transition. So, thanks. Yeah.
Good evening. My name's Tim Farrow. I live at 911 Park Avenue. And I want to speak to comments that were made earlier about the decline in enrollment at the high school by Dr. McDowell. There was a reference to we need to change the narrative. And I agree, we need to change the narrative. But there was also a reference to we need to move on from the Collingswood of 2006 to the Collingswood of 2026. We need to not hearken back to the old Collingswood. We've heard this refrain, I at least have, and I think we all have, several times over the last few years. And what I'd like to move on from is the refrain at all. I want to move on to a Collingswood that is stood upon excellence for all of its students. All of them. Old Collingswood, new Collingswood, white Collingswood, black Collingswood, brown Collingswood. Any person in Collingswood, we all have the same interest. So my request is that we please move on from this divisive comment that consistently is coming up over the last few years about whether we're old or new. We all want the same thing for our schools. And dividing this community any further between what is old, what is new, is not going to get us forward where we want to go. And that's what we all want. Those of us that have criticized things that have happened at the high school does not mean we do not want new. It does not mean that we want old. It just means we want what's best for the students, and we all want that. I was at the orientation at the high school a month ago. Mr. Adams, outstanding, the presentation he gave at that. Same thing from Mr. Newman. I was so impressed and so thrilled to be there and have a student going next year. But I also want to have computer science, and I also don't want to see teachers leaving. But it doesn't mean I don't believe in this high school, in this district, that I criticize something that's been going on. So that's what my hope here is, that in these times that are so difficult, and thank you all, really, thank you from the bottom of my heart, because it's really heartbreaking, these decisions that have to be made. And it's heartbreaking for all of us in this town, but most of all for all of you that have to do this work and not get paid for your time and put your heart and soul, I know you put into it. But we can't have on top of that this continued division about these issues and those that criticize being lumped into one section of this town and those that do not on another. We're all together and we just want to move forward. Thank you.
Can you lower this enough for me? My name is Julia Mullen, 221 East Madison Avenue. I just want to say that, you know, Max did this all on his own. He was not coached by me or Joe, and he's a reflection of this district. He started pre-K at Garfield, he went to Tatum, he went to CMS, and now he's at Collingswood High School. And as a freshman, to be brave enough to start to like initiate that, he's got mentorship from, Mr. Adams helped share his petition, like help spread the word. Like it's really a reflection of the mentoring, like the grit that we teach these kids, like to really stand up. And we should all be proud of the district for that, because these kids are really great at getting great educations. But to support him in his, quest for bringing computer science back, and Chris too, like, I mean, it is such a useful, I work at a university, I'm not an educator, but I'm a support staff, and we, my own student intern is a computer science major. She's amazing. There's so many cross disciplines, like I'm an engineer, but I appreciate you added civil and architectural engineering, I think it was, on the course this year, but there's so many other ways to support engineering, the medical field, and it's through computers and computer sciences, and I think we really need to have a methodology to bring that into these children's lives, because they're on these devices no matter what we do. So if they can turn that into a career or some method of cross, discipline, supporting the medical field with software, there's so many ways they can turn that into productive careers. I think, I checked Rutgers, Rowan, and Temple today, and they all have computer science in their course curriculum. So it's really sad that we don't have it in ours, because we're putting our kids at a disadvantage for getting into a lot of the local schools that kids in Collingswood tend to go to. Regarding budget, I caution, like, taxes in New Jersey are very high, and I don't feel like we can rely on taxes every year to make up the difference. I know we're having to make hard decisions, which are not easy either. We've had to do similar things at Temple. We're running into budget issues there too. They've offered early retirement incentives, and it's an upfront cost, but it kind of clears out a pathway for the younger teachers and the younger staff to kind of grow up into those leadership roles, meaning. And then, our senior leadership too, I saw there was a class of like I think it was like music education for elementary. Like, is there other ways for seniors to get more hands-on and help in classes, having some of those classes maybe too? Because our senior leadership is limited to, 20 or 30 students, and they really do a great job of pushing into the elementary school. So those are just my thoughts, and again, thank you. I know we're all in a really difficult position, and we don't want to lose staff, and we don't want to have to make these decisions, but just wanted to say thank you and give my thoughts. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. I'm Allison Smith. I live at 921 Eldridge Avenue. I have 3 boys in the district. I have an 11th grader, a 9th grader, and a 7th grader. Earlier it was talked about how do we retain our students, keep them in, and I have to be honest, I kind of wish, and I'm hoping to pivot with my younger 2 boys. I have an 11th grader who got into the engineering program at Penn Tech, and it was a pretty impressive program, but at the time, Mr. Kimball, I think, was the director for STEM. He was new, and he talked us into staying. And at the time, Mr. Newman was going to be the new principal, and we were coming from Sharp, loved him. Mr. Adams was coming over here, or he was here already, so we thought, okay, we'll take a leap of faith, and we'll go to Collingswood. We're digging in. So we're doing great on the, anytime someone online dissed Collingswood, I was the first to say, we're having a great experience. It's been nothing but good. Until mid-August this year, my son got his schedule, and AP Physics is an online course for the 6 kids who enrolled, fine. Computer Science has been halted. So let me just back up. When he was in 9th grade, he did 2 tracks. He was doing the engineering track, which was new with Mr. Brescia, and he was doing the computer science track, which at the time was Miss Scratch. Then it was Mr. Solomon. Either way, he did dual credits for both. So again, I'm defending Collingswood to everyone. Sophomore year, he is taking the AP Comp Sci with Mr. Solomon. He disappeared 2 weeks before the school year ended. And then junior year, he was going to take computer science, engineering, and then the goal was senior year, he was going to do cybersecurity, and I think it's civil engineering for seniors. So we were, gung-ho, and then it kind of just got pulled out from underneath him, which is, as a parent with 1 kid and 2 more to go, a little disappointing. So we're talking about retention. I don't know if I want to keep my kids here because we're looking at college now, and I'm thinking, are my kids going to be ready, talking with what Julia and Max and Chris said, are they going to be ready when they go to college and engineering programs and the other kids in their college or high school careers have come with all of that education? Are they going to be in for a rude awakening? I don't know. So my point is, I am just concerned and just felt like I needed to piggyback on Chris and Max and Julia, but also just to end positive note, just because there's one positive thing I can say about this year that's changed. Well, there's a lot, but the yonder pouches, I think, have been a good addition to the school this year. So I'm just going to end it on a positive note. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Sarah Valari. I live at 215 Crestmont. Just wanted to echo the comments of my neighbor, Meg, about, I have a daughter. She's a kindergartner at Garfield, and I have to say I'm a little gutted by this news. This comes as a bit of a surprise. I like to consider myself a reasonably well-informed parent. Involved in the way that a kindergarten parent, I think, normally is, and this is a shock to, every other parent that I've been in contact with in her class. I just hope to echo my neighbor's sentiment that the communication is really, really, please consider us, and please consider that this is going to be really hard. I know that you all feel this. I know that this is a very emotional decision and a very emotional meeting and topic for so many of us, and just the communication is going to be key. It always is in things like this, and we're just really counting on you guys for that. So please, please, please do whatever you can. The best thing you can do for our kids and our community as a whole is to just please do whatever you can to make the communication as smooth, as transparent as possible. I think we all deserve that if we're losing our neighborhood school and that little nugget of our community, because it's really important. So thank you very much.
Good evening, Mike Palucci, Vice President of the CEA. Just gonna fix this here. I just wanted to mention a couple things. Thank you for the presentation tonight. Thank you for your constructive input towards working towards solutions and the thoughtful questions that were asked about it. We've got to cultivate the talent that we have here in the district. And for about 4 years, I've stood up here and I've said a version of the same thing every time, which we're now, these checks are coming due. And I don't mean financially. I mean, there's only so much talent out there. You don't have to have a personal relationship with this special teacher or this person, this staff member. We can appreciate that in the buildings. The parents and students can appreciate that in their own way. But just even from a bean counting perspective, there's only so much talent out there, and you have to cultivate the talent that you have, because we have situations where jobs get posted and we have one person interview for it. And, there's a way to treat people like adults and level with them and be upfront with them and honest with them. We could all be pulling in the same direction. I've stood up here, go watch the tapes on YouTube. I've said it for 4 years. We should all be pulling in the same direction. There is no difference in ideology that's really that big between any faction of us here. We all want what's best for our kids. We all want equity and inclusion. We all want robust, powerful schools that serve the needs of our community. And the way that if you fail to build a coalition when you're coming to the public with things, then it's never going to be sustained. It's never going to be sustainable. You need to rely on the people that you have to carry the message for you. And the way that they do that is if they believe in what you're saying and in what you're doing, because they know. People know there's limit. People can't say all of the things that go on in their schools because they're professionals, but they know the way they're treated. They know things they're told that are not necessarily the reality of what's happening. And we have an obligation to protect our students and to be confidential and to be professional. We can't always say those things. But people feel a culture in the place of work where they work. And that's true of Collingswood, just like it's true in other places of employment, around the country, anywhere. So I want us to think about what we can do to cultivate the talent that we have, to lessen the impacts of these cuts, You know, you guys know this, but there's people who have family members who are sick. They're waiting to find out if they have a job. At a meeting this morning, not even a meeting, it was an impromptu meeting, lasted almost 45 minutes. There was 3 of us in the room talking about one student who I have who's in a class of 26 among 6 classes that I have. We're all maxed out. 45 minutes talking about what's best for that one student. 3 of us, 66% of the people in that room don't know if they're gonna have a job by the end of the school year. That's what it took to meet the needs of one student. So we really need to think about how we can all work together, put our differences aside, and treat one another like adults by being upfront, honest, and innovative. Thank you.
Hi. Hi, everybody. My name's Evangeline Gutwein. I live at 170 Lawnside. Chris is my neighbor. Hey, Chris. I actually work in Collingswood, and I have kids in Collingswood, and I live in Collingswood. I love Collingswood. I love the teachers of Collingswood. They're fantastic. I'm trying to get, I remember last year, this happened. It was even more complicated because we didn't have contracts. And then we had like a big thing with the borough, right? The borough came up and they were like, hey, what's going on? How can we help? Let's share Good Shepherd. How can we help lift up and resolve the budget? And I was wondering if anyone was like, hey, borough, here's what's going on. Do you think we can have that talk again? Because it sounded to me like my memory of it was that it was like it was a union between the Board of Education and the borough, and it was to work together to help remedy the budget issue. That's my memory of it. I don't know if I'm correct, but I would like to hear more about that and see if maybe that's something that is possible and maybe as a result could save jobs and Garfield. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Aubrey Emmerich, 35 Harvard Avenue. I have 3 kids in Garfield right now, and I just sort of wanted to build upon what Meg and Sarah had just talked about, that in addition to communication, I would just ask that you work with as much dispatch as possible. If you're going to be reassigning, 113 kids to different schools, my kids are going to find out about this very soon. My 5th grader won't have to deal with this, but my 4th and my 1st will. And they're going to say, where am I going to go to school? Am I going to get to go to Newby with, kids I know from soccer? Do I get to go to Tatum with kids I know from baseball? They're going to be super anxious until they know where they're going to school next year. And I would just really respectfully request that you work with as much dispatch as you possibly could to alleviate. Every kid in that school is going to want to know where they're going next year. And it's going to be really stressful for them until they know. So, thank you.
Hello. Nancy Reddy, 254 East Night, also a Garfield parent. I want to say thank you to the Garfield teachers who are here. Which, I could just sob telling you, the people who have loved my children. You taught them to read, Miss Nash doing, tutoring on Zoom. Oh. And it's just such a warm and loving school, and I know it's not an easy decision, obviously, to close a school. But it's frustrating, as a lot of people have alluded to, because it feels like a little bit of Groundhog Day. We've been here a couple years in a row, I think, where all of a sudden it's budget time and folks seem to be like, oh no, we don't have any money. And last year, I feel like I made a version of this comment, which was kind of where is the forward planning on this? Last year, we super scrambled. We raised taxes in a way that has been really tough for a lot of families. It has. My family pays more in taxes every month than we do in our mortgage, and I know that is the case for a lot of people in this town. And if there's the possibility to go out for a referendum, if people really feel like that's what we need to do, why haven't we done that prior to now? Like, the lack of forward planning is really distressing for me. I will also say, this just feels like a difficult time to be going through something with leadership that I will just say I do not entirely believe is being like straight up with us. It is dishonest, for example, to say that families are leaving for Catholic schools because they suddenly got religion when their kids were in 8th grade. That's not what's happening. If you talk to families in this town, that's not why they're going to Paul VI or why they're going to Bishop Eustace. And the fact that our leadership is not able to be honest about the things that are driving our students out of the high school is really troubling to me. And I really hope that the conversations people are having tonight about especially course offerings at the high school, staff retention, that you all are really listening to that and taking it in.
Okay, it doesn't look like anyone else is coming up for public comment. Thank you all so much for coming up and sharing your thoughts with us. We're going to move on to section 10, Business Administrator Board Secretary Report.
All right, item 10.01 are the February 2026 budget transfers. 10.02 is your February financial statements. 10.03 is your student activity cash report. 10.04 is the food service financial statement for the month of February, and 10.05 is the purchase orders issued for the month of March, and 10.06 is a listing of the warrants to be paid tomorrow morning pending approval this evening.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Coleman. We're going to move on to section 11, Buildings and Grounds and Finance.
Would you like me to keep going? Okay.
Thank you.
So items 11.01 through 11.08 is requesting approval for all of those financial items that I had just mentioned. 11.09 is requesting permission for submission of the 2026-2027 school district budget to the New Jersey Department of Education. 11.10 is submitting the 26-27 preschool budget to the Department of Education. 11.11 is approving a new scholarship to be offered at the high school from the Collingswood Civic Collective. 11.12 is a resolution to be in compliance with the new law regarding how we advertise for our board meetings. Basically, there will be a hyperlink on our website, and it will also be registered with a state website. 11.13 and 11.14, approving the mental health screening grants and the school-based mental health grant. 11.15 is approving a special ed out-of-district tuition agreement for a child. 11.16 is approving a tuition contract for another special ed out-of-district child, this one at Burlington County Special Services. 11.17 is approving Burlington County Special Services attached is their list of rates. So every child that we send there, the attached has all the rates, the different tuition rates depending on the program, and the amount for instructional assistance and other services like OTPT. 11.18 is approving the 26-27 tuition agreement between Collingswood and the Camden County Tech School. 11.19 is approving $5,000 grant with the Sustainable New Jersey. 11.20 through 11.22 are revised shared service agreements with Oak Lynn, where we pay Oak Lynn for pre-K support for our preschool classes that are housed in their building. And then 11.23 through 11.28 are all use of facilities request forms.
Okay, we are looking for approval of items 11.01 to 11.28. I have a cheat sheet tonight, just FYI, on the approval of items, just. Any questions or comments from board members?
We need first and a
Sorry,
second.
yeah, Yep, sorry. Can I have a motion to approve the items 11.01 to 11.28? And a second?
Second.
Okay. Questions or comments from board members?
I just want to make sure I'm really clear on our timeline. It's submitted, county reviews it, we will have clarity of the state, but in the meantime, prompt and diligent planning and coordination to communicate to families by when will happen, right? Like, I do want to just make sure I'm clear on the timeline beyond the budget approval process of how these impacts will start to get communicated.
Yes, at the school level, so starting this week, we'll be going back to all of our school leaders, being able to identify and detail impact of the budget for future presentation. Parallel to that, we will be engaging specific school communities like Garfield parallel to this process, because that's going to take a very different approach than some of our other campuses. And so all of that will be taking place over the next 30 days. But there will be communication that goes out first thing tomorrow morning that kind of encapsulates a summary of what was presented this evening with more details and frequently asked questions by the end of the week. And then we will be engaging Garfield families directly, and we'll be reporting back to the board on a regular basis leading up to April 27th.
I understand the timeline. Thank you for that. For those of us who would like to see some exact numbers behind some of these cuts, when will board members be able to see, like, when will this be filled out a little bit more in terms of, you know, this many positions, not people, obviously, but this many positions, this is how much we're going to save. How much are we saving by, you know, getting rid of the operational costs of Garfield? What happens to that building? Where, you know, you said positions across the board, where those positions are coming from. Can board members expect to get that information before the next committee of the whole in April, or, you know,
It'll be very close to the committee of the whole date. We're talking about a massive undertaking, and we want to make sure that we're giving you accurate information.
Thank you.
I have a question about communication. You know, given that I think what we've heard about communication being really important, and I think the sense that I got also from some of the public comments was that there are folks out there who maybe don't necessarily say believe or trust certain things that the district themselves are sending out. Knowing that a lot of these like the tax rates, for example, is really important. That we have very few options here to have a closed, have a balanced budget, and knowing that communication is really important. My question for board leadership is whether or not, as a board, we will be echoing with our own messages the necessity of these changes and the rationale behind the tax raises. So that we can make sure that the community understands from multiple different places how these are really difficult choices, but ones that have to be made.
Thank you for the comment, Roger. We're going to do everything we can to stay in close contact with the district administration and hope to meet with them on a regular basis to get some more updates and get that all out to you and to the community as best as we possibly can.
I do think we also need to acknowledge that the partnership, borough-district partnership, I think Kelly and I, since we've been in this space, have been asking for several conversations. I do want us to really brainstorm and strategize around what kind of conversations and what we're focusing on going forward. because I can appreciate, depending on the frame and where you're coming into this conversation, you're not sure if this is a continuation of what we did last year, or we are really trying to rebuild getting back to that point. So just want to also task us with trying to, how do we transparently articulate this to our borough leadership in a way that also helps them understand their responsibility for helping us going forward. Just want to make sure we're showing up in that space, because I think we've had several conversations and this has not been a focus of them, and want to just make sure we remain focused on getting on the same page.
Ms. Devine and Ms. Mai, thank you. Yeah, I think what you all are talking about are definitely really important. You know, my experience from last year and from these budget issues is that, you know, I know Dr. Seltzer and I, our thought process behind it was to be as communicative to the community as possible, right? So that they're hearing, you know, both from district administration leaders and also from board leadership, and also, you know, working with the borough as much as possible to get out some of those messages. And so, you know, understand that this is a massive change for our town, our district, and also on top of that, you know, another $1.5 million tax raise, right? I would encourage board leadership to consider additional messages to help, you know, get the message across.
I will reiterate and echo what Ms. Maya said. We will certainly cascade, echo, amplify all messages shared and articulated, right? Like, that is our whole charge, right? I think that is our frame. I certainly don't want to speaking out of turn, right? We don't want to go a cart before the horse, so we want to make sure we understand these timelines. I'm pushing really on timeline so that we can better understand our timeline for echoing, supporting, and providing the necessary scaffolding and reinforcement to trust the process, right? And so I 100% agree with you, and have a few messages around, like, around how will we all sing from the same songbook. So it is not lost on us that we need to quickly galvanize around the communication. I think the articulation of these details was some of why we were pushing in Thursday's meeting, right, to prepare ourselves. But without it, you know, we could only kind of determine how far we could go. So certainly we'll be there doing that.
So before we vote, 11.9 or 1109, we're voting on a submission of the budget, which takes out Garfield, which takes out a number of positions, at least on a salary line, takes out athletics, but we still don't have that information to put in for the board. So we took it out of line items, but we can't disseminate that information to the board. So I'm a little confused on, you know, like, I understand the details are what's going to continue to be worked on, but regardless, I looked through the 107-page, you know, submission, and of course, you know, not line by line, but there, you know, there's no longer Garfield on there. So what was the amount of Garfield that was in there last year that we can see the savings for? It's hard for me to kind of approve something where I don't see the direct, you know, correlation to the reductions and the budget.
I mean, I guess I'm a little confused because these were the specific cuts that we discussed as a board at the board retreat at the beginning of February, including the number of potential layoffs. As these were the exact possibilities that were discussed at the beginning of February. So I guess I'm confused about the lack of that. There's
I'm
lack
aware,
of
but now that it's budget season, I would have assumed that between February and March, you know, or we've had, you know, 6 weeks since that we would have had a little more information to share. But it doesn't seem like we do. So where have we gone from retreat to now, and how come more details can't be provided?
So, and maybe I will offer, right, we knew of the possible levers that could be pulled. The question is, how much is proxy, right? We're not asking for a level of detail that I think is being inferred through the question. Is this 500,000? Is this 20,000? That is what next to each decision, the anticipated financial reduction, because we've all scrolled through an enormous document, and to catch the difference between this year and last year is almost impossible. So that's really the question, right? We know you were doing a ton of work. We're asking, well, what's the math difference based on those things that were removed? In generality, because I would offer, we get it, we see that it's different, but just a summary is really the ask, and an average. Like, I think we all, where there has been details, actually, as some folks have referenced, the referendum was really clear about how much that school cost. But this budget, we can't be really clear about how much this school cost. And I think that is really incredulous, that we can reference something that everyone said no to, but, right, and so I'm just asking for a ballpark. Right, like, let's just be.
So let me go ahead and weigh in, because we are not going to continue to tiptoe around to try to get to a number that is unknown at this point. When we talk about reductions, we're not talking about specific people, we're talking about positions. And so, for example, the value of a single position, if you do not include health benefits, is roughly $62,000. Okay? And so at the end of the day, for us to attempt to encapsulate $3.3 million and break it down by specific program area, what we're submitting is a balanced budget. And so in order for us to give you an accurate number of the actual impact, it requires us to take a little bit more time. We were backs against the wall to make sure that we could actually fulfill our fiduciary responsibility of submitting to you for review a balanced budget. And so the spreadsheet that you're seeing is what's actually being submitted to the state. The budget details, the impact, the movement, all of those core pieces for us to be able to appropriately determine where the actual savings are coming from needed to balance the budget. That requires a whole other degree of calculation that we're not prepared to provide this evening.
I really appreciate that response, and also just want to sit in a space of the county's going to get this and they're not going to ask for the detail. Like, I'm actually just wondering, like, so on average, schools this much, right? Like, that's what I'm just, they're going to, we are sitting in a space of it's balanced. They expect that we have done our job at this table, and the district leaders have done their job, that this budget is sound and will have the impact needed. So I just want to make sure that we're all, I appreciate that the detail, and I don't think we're asking for a level that is what is being internalized. If it's 62,000, like, wait, do the math. This is X number of positions. This is X number of programs. That is back of the envelope level. And I think that's what we're asking for, but I also, haste makes waste, right? You're being really prudent, but I want to be, back of the envelope is really what we're asking.
Beth Ann can give you categorical numbers, but it won't be explicit to Garfield.
I think that is fair, and I just want to make a statement that I expect that the board is hearing it with, so that you were clearer and not, I don't want to, like, got ya, you said this number, why isn't it that number? That is not the intention of getting this information. And I will ask that we hold ourselves to, this is to help inform the decision, not to, like, remember it till in 10 years, okay?
No, and I think that goes without saying, right? I mean, you know, it's our job to know what's behind the number that we're being asked to vote on. You know, and I think that, as Maggie pointed out, that's one of the few jobs that we have. So, you know, I think that's the goal here.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, thank you.
You get an idea of the area in the budgets that I've cut. So athletics, about 153,000. Benefits, obviously extracurricular, 58,600. Facilities, 237,000. Just miscellaneous accounts, we just cut 32,000. Salaried positions, $1.9 million. That's all areas in the budget. Security, we've cut 56,000. Supplies, 281,000. Technology, we trimmed back. Transportation, I've cut back, and tuition, $75,702. So basically every area, but.
One of the things I know, again, because this is something that the board's had to deal with for several years now. One of the, I think, challenges with the budgeting process, which I think all districts go with, is that there's a dollar amount, right, cut, and there's, I think, general planning about whether or not the number of cuts is sustainable for a school district, et cetera, X, Y, and Z. But there is a really, I think, complicated process just for the public to understand when it comes to actually enacting layoffs because of a confluence of laws and contracts and so forth. And so part of, I think, the reason why it can be really difficult to speak specifically about the number of staff, I know from previous experience, is that until every single domino in that process in the laws, in the contract are taken through the entire process, which takes weeks, long time, and every employee has a chance to exercise their rights per the law and per contract. The specific positions and number of positions and so forth can't be shared. And so I know that is a really frustrating thing for the public, for the board as well, because we don't know. But that's one of those things where I think the 1.9 million piece that Ms. Coleman just referenced, I mean, that's essentially the majority, which makes sense considering that our school budgets are vast majority personnel. The majority of these cuts are going to be personnel, and that's the unfortunate piece of it, and why I think we as a board need to again dig more deeply into the revenue piece about what we can and can't bring in.
So guys, I'm using paper math. This is me practicing what Sam has to do for homework right now. And so I just want to make sure that I am internalizing, and Mr. Chu, I totally get it, right? Where there's a lot of detail. I think part of what will help everybody understand just the extracurricular athletics, that helps us just get a sense of what that means, and that those germane programs will be changing. Positions obviously will be the biggest portion. It's really how much does that equate to? It's going to be where we are going to tussle a bit, not tussle, but have to juggle. So these are all of these options are these numbers, and we don't have it specific to. So when we meet in April, we will have specificity based on each of these, the detailed articulation of each of these. Okay, thank you.
I'll also jump in. Actually, Mr. Olson had a question way back when about the pay-to-play thing, and something that I figured it's like an esoteric term. So just I'm figuring more people probably need to know what pay-to-play is. So when the reduction is said select athletics and co-convert to pay-to-play, what that means is actually, I think, fully pay-to-play. So typically, when you look at schools, students who participate in extracurricular activity or sport, they will likely pay, their families will pay a certain amount, right? Like, I want to be part of the film club. I'll pay $50, right, to be part of the film club. When something converts fully to pay-to-play, what that means is, instead of the district paying for, $100 of it and your family paying for 50, you would pay for the whole 150. So every cost that's associated with that extracurricular would be paid for by families. And so that's what that means, I think, just to help explain that piece there.
Ms. Coleman, the numbers that you just listed, do you have a total for them, what they add up to?
Those came to $2,937,996. The difference between that and the 3.3 is tuition adjustment.
Thank you. Anybody else?
I'm just going to say thank you for giving those who like the math to math a bit more clarity. So thank you for that.
I will will second that. Thank you. Okay. Ms. Coleman, roll call, please.
Mrs. Brown,
Yes.
Mr. Chu,
Yes.
Mrs. DeMarco,
Yes.
Mrs. Devine,
Yes.
Mrs. Mikulski,
Yes, except for 11.9, where I vote no.
Mrs. Sherman,
Yes, except for 11.08, I abstain, check number 63708.
Mrs. Z,
Yes, except for 11.09 where I vote no.
Mr. Dulkus,
Yes.
Mrs. Maya,
Yes. We're going to move on to section 12, curriculum update. There are a few important calendar pieces in here that I'm sure we're going to want to talk about. So, Mara, I'm going to pass it off to you.
Hi, good evening, folks. Thank you so much to everyone who's still here. As has been said on a few occasions, I just want to take another opportunity to thank the cast and staff leaders with Mamma Mia. I had the opportunity to see it with my family on Saturday evening. I think the board office can all attest that they are sick of hearing me sing the Mamma Mia songs at this point, mainly because I can't sing. I want to thank Mr. Gross, Ms. Hartman, Mr. Hartung, Ms. Introcaso, Ms. Goodall, and Mr. Jackson. It was truly a tremendous performance. We have really talented kids and really, really talented staff as well. Up for approval tonight are items 12.02, 12.03, 12.04, which are all field trips. Item 12.05 are 7 out-of-district or home instruction placements. Item 12.06 is an out-of-district placement that was earlier referenced in Beth Ann Coleman's earlier section. Item 12.07 is the revision to the 25-26 school calendar, June 2026 specifically. Item 12.08 is the approval of next year's academic calendar, 2026-2027 academic calendar. That includes any of the clarifications that came up, or the color coding, that came up at the committee of the whole last week. So those are all incorporated into the draft for your approval tonight that's linked in the board docs. Item 12.09 is an approval for an outside entity to provide at no cost to the district one-to-one assistance for a kindergarten student. I've put item 12.10 is a parent and guardian opportunity to participate in a parent-family workshop on creative alternatives to screen time. This is for pre-K families specifically. And I will take any questions or comments before voting.
I just want to publicly thank you again for developing a committee and meeting with everyone and getting everyone's input. Like I say, collaboration is where we work best, right? And I wish we could do that more often and with everything. I also wanted to thank you for the changes or the suggestions that were made last week at Committee of the Whole. I did notice that, for the calendar update that they were done, so we appreciate that. Anybody else have any questions or comments? All right,
We need a motion, I
I
think.
make a motion to approve section 12. We're looking for approval of items section 12.01 to 12.10. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Ms. Coleman, roll call, please.
Mrs. Brown,
Yes.
Mr. Chu,
Yes.
Mrs. DeMarco,
Yes.
Mrs. Devine,
Yes.
Mrs. Mikulski,
Yes.
Mrs. Sherman,
Yes.
Mrs. Z, Mr. Dulkus,
Yes, except we're required to abstain.
Mrs. Maya,
Yes. Okay. So, any questions or comments from board members on section 13? No? Okay. All right. Can I get a motion to approve items 1301 to 1327?
We're on 12.
Sorry. Okay. I just thought, yeah. Okay. I was like,
13, guys. We just did 12.
yeah.
We just did 12. Oh, sorry.
It's okay.
It's long.
I did double check. All right, so 13, we're looking for approval of items. This is harder because of this format. I think it goes a little faster. 1301 to 1327. Did
So
we get a
moved.
motion? Okay, can we get a second? Okay. Ms. Coleman, roll call, please.
Mrs. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Chu?
Yes.
Mrs. DeMarco?
Yes.
Mrs. Devine?
Yes.
Mrs. Mikulski?
Yes.
Mrs. Sherman?
Yes.
Mrs. Z?
Yes.
Mr. Dilkis?
Yes, except we're required to abstain.
Mrs. Maya?
Yes. We're going to move on to section 14, and I do believe that we have some pieces of discussion for section 14 policy. Who's presenting for that?
I can jump in for the first one unless Dr. McDowell, you prefer we go in a different structure? Is that okay, Kelly?
Yep, that's fine. Thank you.
I think there, 1, 2, 3, 4. The 5 underneath policy 9230 are all required updates or revisions. Someone correct me if I'm speaking out of turn. 9230 is the only current policy that is up for review and revision. It is attached for your review. The language and format and content of all wording from the opening phrasing through items 1 through 6 that were listed were already in place. We've simply added a 7th section. As you all are aware, we have updated our district bike policy to allow for younger students to ride. There are more bikers and scooters and skateboard, and so we are simply using this existing policy as an opportunity to reinforce safety routes to school and from school for all of our students, and reminding families, parents, guardians that getting them to and from school safely is a partnership with us, but we take over when the opening bell rings and release them back to you at the end of the school day. So that's the only addition or change to that policy.
All right. The 0142.1 is also mandatory, correct? And so is policy 2020. I know in policy 2020 there were some different options that we could choose from. How do you guys want to go about that tonight?
Their first read, so do we need to confirm which one in the first read? Okay, that's what I thought.
I recommended to the Oakland board to choose the first option because that's the most like generic, where you guys set the expectations and what you would like in the description.
So just so the public
Instead
is-
of the policy being prescriptive, the board who's seated at the time you guys can decide. I think it's.
So just so the public is aware, this is policy 2020, employment of chief school administrator. It is a mandatory policy. However, we are trying to figure out, there are 2 options on the table. One is when we're hiring a superintendent, do we set the criteria as a board, or the second option is to have a whole list of criteria that we can choose from. So the recommendation is for option 1 is for the board to select, to determine the criteria. So I would like, do I need to make a motion to vote for that right now?
No, as long as everybody is okay with it, then we can make the change for second read.
All in favor? Is that good? Yeah? Okay. So I would like to make a motion to select option 1, which is that the board would choose the criteria in the event of us hiring a chief a superintendent. Long night. So all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so.
So we'll make the change, and when it comes to second read, you'll see the selection that was made.
And then we just have policy 55, or 1552, sexual harassment for staff. That used to be merged into other policies, and it is now its own policy. So just wanted to let everybody know about that if you didn't hear that last week. And then that is also mandatory, as well as policy 2535, the library material policy. That is also mandatory. That, I believe, is a new policy based on a new law that was recently passed. If I'm incorrect about that, please let me know. And
You
then-
are correct.
Okay, and policy 9130, which are public complaints, and that just had some minor word changes that I was aware of. We also have something up for a second read, policy 2430, co-curricular activities. That's been updated to include grades 3 to 5, and there are no regulations at this time. So, any questions or comments from board members? So
Need
we-
a motion?
Can I get, motion before questions come, thank you. So can I get a motion to approve items 14.01 to 1403?
So moved.
Second? Any questions or comments from board members? Ms. Coleman, roll call, please.
Mrs. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Chu?
Yes.
Mrs. DeMarco?
Yes.
Mrs. Devine?
Yes.
Mrs. Mikulski?
Yes.
Mrs. Sherman?
Yes.
Mrs. Z?
Yes.
Mr. Dilkus?
Yes.
Mrs. Maya?
Yes. All right, moving on to section 15, miscellaneous items. We're just looking for approval of items 1501 to 1502. Can I get a motion to approve those items?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any questions or comments from board members?
Quick question, and maybe it's in this document and I just can't find it. I'm sure there's some way to track, like, every time there's police involvement on campus, right? Whenever, like, the law enforcement, for the MOA I'm talking about, like, when the law enforcement is called to campus, is there some way to track, like, you know, I'm sure it's wrapped up with our HIB reporting, but, like, how often police are coming to campus, or?
So the police, they track the calls, and they send us reports.
You do have access to that, like, our discipline office, or that's in our data? Okay, I was just wondering.
Ms. Coleman, roll call, please.
Mrs. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Chu?
Yes.
Mrs. DeMarco?
Yes.
Mrs. Devine?
Yes.
Mrs. Mikulski?
Yes.
Mrs. Sherman?
Yes.
Mrs. Z?
Yes.
Mr. Dilkus?
Yes.
Mrs. Maya?
Yes. Section 16, public participation is for the committee of the whole. If you haven't, followed that yet, we're only doing one public comment section per meeting. So the public comment section for section 16 is for the committee of the whole. So we'll do that again next week, or next month, sorry. Nobody wants to come next week. All right, so with that, I'm going to move on to section 17, motion to adjourn.
So moved.
And a second. All in favor?
Aye.